Hello. So, gonna continue with Seduce Me to the Demon War. We're still in James's route. Hi, how are you? So, and I forgot where we left off. I actually forgot where we left off. I know that we're trading with Shadow, that's all I remember. That's all I remember. All I know is that we were training with Shadow for this war that we're doing. The remainder of the day became focused on me manipulating light and shadow in the library. While being in the shadow plane was fun, it was only effective if the targets of my movements were either sources of light or had distinct shadows of their own. At the end of the day, I was exhausted. Who knew that using magic would be so difficult? Still, I guessed that I had potential or else I wouldn't have decided. In passing the test, Shadow threw at me. I had to be proud of that much. I slumped and fell on the ground exhausted. I definitely used up a lot of energy, and it was a foreign feeling to me as a human. It was like my body became heavier with each breath I took, but it wasn't entirely painful. A small huff caused me to look over at Shadow, seeing him stare at me intensely with crossed arms. What?
For a human, you have a large amount of energy. I'm surprised you're not a witch.
I felt a little, I can't pronounce that word, by the statement. Despite how strangely it was phrased, I guess Shadow really couldn't genuinely comfort anyone. I wondered why. I had to, I had so much to learn, but was excited for the next day as my training ended and I was sent to my room. Okay. I returned to my room that night wondering how things had
Mommy shark do 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 mommy shark. Daddy shark do 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 daddy shark do 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 daddy shark do 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 daddy shark.
That was a long one. And that was it was loud and a long one. I didn't realize it was long. A long sound alert, but meh. Wondering how things had come to this. My body was exhausted, but my mind was running 100 miles an hour. I had to physically be near the demon lord while he died. How specific was this curse? As I sat on the bed, I ran my hands through my hair and over my face, attempting to ease the nerves beneath my skin. Despite it not working, get me. Yeah, it was cool. Oh, hang on a second. As I sat on the attempting to ease the nerves beneath my skin, despite it not working as well as I'd hoped, I found my mind organizing my thoughts constructively. I was training for a reason after all. I was working to make sure I survived this war and was able to go home with James, the man I loved. However, just thinking about him brought back memories of Seto screaming and Diana crying. Was it really James's fault that Diana's family was killed? All James wanted was freedom. As I thought of him, James entered the room and spotted me, a tired smile growing on his face. I smiled back, matching his exhaustion.
You look worn out.
So do you. James chuckled slightly and walked over. Sitting beside me, I felt myself instinctively scoot closer to his body and lay my head on his shoulder. The simple move made my body almost sink into his. When did James ever feel this warm? James's arm wrapped around my waist and pulled me closer as he placed a kiss on my head. I could only hum happily.
So, about sleeping tonight.
I looked up to James, wondering where the question came from. It was random, and I didn't understand what he meant until I stretched back into my thoughts. Angels. James nodded. He was right. How was I supposed to sleep when angels were after me? They could reach into my dreams or remove my memories without me being able to fight back. At least not without Seto's or Diana's help. It wasn't fair to depend on them, especially after remembering what Seto confessed this morning. James, however, gently turned me in his arms to face him. I looked up at him, wondering what he was up to. I had to ask. I trusted him, but I still wanted to know what he was thinking and planning. James continued to stare into my eyes before frowning softly.
I want to try and do something, but I'm not sure if it will work. It's been years since I've used pure demon magic, after all.
What did he mean? Was he going to cast some sort of spell on me? What kind of spell was he going to use? I stared at James, unsure of the whole thing, but James kissed my forehead.
Please, trust me, love.
It took a moment for me to slowly ease my curious nerves. James just wanted to help, and if this was the way, then this was the way. I nodded, giving him the okay to do whatever he needed to do. James gently ran his thumbs over the sides of my face, tracing over the edges of my eyes and cheekbones. I felt small wisps of energy dance over my nerves and closed my eyes gently, becoming lost in the sensation. I could faintly see golden light piercing through the darkness of my eyelids, so I kept my eyes closed, confident that it was the best thing to do. A warmth enveloped my head, filling my thoughts with pure calm and serenity. It felt almost too unreal. As the light faded away, I opened my eyes to meet the loving gaze of my incubus. He gently caressed my cheeks and placed his forehead against mine, closing his eyes with a smile. I felt joy wash over me as he held my head close to him.
There. That should work.
What'd you do?
A small mind barrier spell. It's been a long time since I've used a spell like that. Simple, but hopefully effective.
Hopefully. I nodded before gently nuzzling James. It had to work. It absolutely had to work. My heart swelled in hope that everything would be okay. I gently stretched up and kissed him softly on the lips. He gently kissed me back and held my head to him, pressing me to his chest lovingly. I could feel him sneak a bit of energy from me, but I didn't mind. As we both laid back in bed to sleep that night, James's spell was tested. Floating in the darkness, a dream was never the same every time. Sometimes I'd be floating in water, other times I would be flying through air. The experience over my nerves changed every time, and I could never prepare myself for what dream or nightmare would come. That night, however, I found myself once again in a jail cell. Oh, come on! Huh? No, not again! I didn't understand. Why was I here again? What was Why was I once again trapped in a cell? What is going on, dude? I looked down at my body to see my regular clothes still on. There was no shackle attached to my ankle, and I was free as I could be. That was different. Still, I had to be on guard. I quickly stood up and walked to the cell door, running my hands over the metal. At the mere touch of my hands, the door slowly swung open, releasing me and allowing me to leave its dark cage. Another difference. I stepped forward, looking up and down the hall I was in. There were no screams, no cries. It was as silent as the grave. That worried me and made me feel uneasy. Despite the relief, I felt that the dream was not the same as the nightmare I had before. At least that's what had happened. That's what I had hoped. James? A sudden cry of pain echoed down the hall, causing me to look over in the direction it erupted from. My heart stopped for a moment, recognizing the voice. James? My body rushed on its own towards his voice, now desperate to find him. Why was he in pain? Who was hurting him? At last, I arrived at the door, barely opened a crack. I peeked in and gasped what I saw. Oh my god, dude! Chained to the far wall was James, his body twitching in pain as he desperately attempted to free himself. I stared in shock as my eyes took in a cross burnt onto his chest that seemed to sizzle over his flesh.
Pretium solutum furit, deomonum habintem, ascipe.
What is happening, dude?
Never.
Are you kidding me? At James's reply to the voice, the mark on his chest began to glow a hot red and yellow color, burning further into his skin. I unconsciously ran my hand over my chest in sympathy, wincing at the sight. You freaking kidding me, dude? I needed to stop whatever this was. Demon or not, James was in pain. I threw the door open and rushed in, revealing everything in the room. However, the only person in it was James himself, who was now staring at me wide-eyed in fear. James?
Stay back!
What is happening? The mark began to burn brighter on his skin, ushering me to rush forward and pull on the bonds to set him free. The steel bonds held fast against the wall, not moving an inch.
I would rather burn than let you touch her!
What? I stared at James wide-eyed. Was he doing this to protect me? Was this happening because of the protection spell he cast on me? What? I didn't get a chance to think on it long. However, a bright flash of light erupted from James' body, and I shut my eyes, blinded by the sight. James! My eyes refused to open until I felt myself awaken. I shot up in bed, gasping and clutching my chest. My heart pounded inside of my ribs. Oh my god, what the hell was that? Frightening pace as I recalled the images from the dream. Despite it not ending with me being attacked, it ended with James getting hurt. As I thought of James, I quickly looked over to see him still fast asleep. Luckily, I didn't scream to wake him this time, so I felt relieved that he wasn't ripped from his own rest. My heartbeat began to slow as I silently took a deep breath and let it out. It was a dream. I ran my palms over my eyes and rubbed them gently, calming down at last. I had to get through this. I had to keep my sanity about me. Yet something in my gut wouldn't let me let this dream go. Something inside me ushered me to keep thinking about it as if it was missing something. Was I overthinking something important? How could that have been? I shook my head and slowly laid back down, curling up against James and closing my eyes again. I had to rest. I had to let it go for now. I would figure this out later. Darkness greeted me again, and I was safe until morning. I woke up in James's arms once more, slowly blinking the sleep from my eyes as the vision focused on his chest. As I stared, I vaguely pictured the cross burn over his skin, but was relieved to find no such thing there in reality. It had been just a dream. I looked up to see James smiling down at me softly before he kissed my forehead.
Good morning. Did you have a good rest?
I remembered the nightmare and suddenly became unsure of whether or not the truth was something he wanted to hear. I did rest, but I did wake up from that nightmare during the night. Was it worth telling him? I couldn't lie. I shook my head and the smile on James's face disappeared. As much as it would make him unhappy, it was better to let him know the result of his spell. I wasn't attacked by angels or anything, but you were.
I was.
I ran my hand over my chest, imaging the burn from the dream and whatever you pronounce that word, on his skin. You were bolted to the wall and had a cross cut into your chest. It was burning, and you were arguing with the voice in the air.
A cross. So it was an angel's work.
Why, though? James closed his eyes in thought, trying to figure out why himself, but as he opened his eyes to look at me, his smile did not return.
The spell I cast to protect you placed an image of me in your mind, like a guardian. If they came, my spell would have forced them to attack me instead. Luckily, it worked.
Oh. James ran his hand over my cheek.
However, you still went through a nightmare, and for that I am sorry.
No, don't be. You protected me. So the dream was part of his spell. I felt relieved that it worked. The side effect was an image of James being hurt. At least it wasn't actually him. I ran my hand over James's cheek, smiling softly. Thank you. At last James's smile appeared before he softly took my hand and kissed my palm.
All for you, love.
A knock on the door, however, interrupted our moment together again.
Who is it?
Diana, I have food for you both.
Hey, Diana. I looked to the door as James called out for her to enter. The door opened to reveal Diana with 2 plates of food, the same meal we had the day prior. She walked over and handed the plates to us before stepping back.
I assume that you both had a good rest.
Yes, actually. We've worked out the angel problem for now.
For now. Diana raised her eyebrow, crossing her arms, but nodded in reply. Looking at Diana, however, I could see small dark circles beneath her eyes. Did she not rest last night? Diana, are you okay? You look worn out. Diana stared at me for a moment before shaking her head.
I didn't get much rest. I spent most of the night dealing with some uninvited guests.
Should we be worried?
No, I have everything under control.
Okay. A part of me didn't believe her, but I nodded regardless. If she didn't wish to talk about it, then it was better not to ask about it any further. Diana turned on her heels and began to walk out of the room, but she stopped at the archway and looked back at me.
If any angels come your way again, tell me.
With that warning, Diana left, leaving James and I unable to reply. What could we say to that? James had already placed a spell on me to protect me, and he seemed to be just fine. He would be fine. James and I ate our food before separating to train. As soon as I arrived at the library to train, I stopped when I heard Diana's voice erupt from it.
Where is the flower?
I believe you were already informed as to what happened to it.
Do not tell me you are blind to its significance.
I peeked into the room, confused as to what was going on. Diana, with a face full of irritated anger, leaned against the mantel of the fireplace as Shadow pored over his scrolls, as he usually did. He didn't even look at Diana as he spoke, disinterested in the topic of the conversation.
It wasn't needed for the gate spell, so it was deemed unnecessary. It was tossed out as a result of that judgment.
You do realize that flower is one of very few out there in this plane, correct?
And this should bother me. Why?
I could practically cut through the tension in the air with a knife. The way they spoke to each other spoke volumes in their disdain for one another. Why was that the case, though? They were working for the same case? Diana almost snarled with surprised me.
It should bother you, because as consequence of your thoughtless action, I am putting your scouts in charge of finding another.
And why would I allow this?
Oh boy. I watched as a dark purple and black flame slowly emanate I can't say that word from Diana's body, causing Shadow to look over, straighten up, and take in the sight.
Because while you are their commanding officer, I am the head of this entire rebellion, and my orders outrank yours.
Diana glared hard at me, but I could feel the intensity of her glare from the doorway, making a hard shiver run up my spine. Where did this Diana come from? I recognized her tone, but didn't want to imagine that this was the real her. As Shadow finally sighed, the tension died a bit.
As you wish. Another will be found without delay.
Diana's aura faded as she let out a sigh, calming down from her angry display. Something was wrong with how Diana presented herself. Still, she altered her tone.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Shadow only stared coldly at Diana as she pushed herself away from the fireplace and walked towards the door, panicked to be found out. For eavesdropping, I stepped out of my hiding spot as if I had just arrived, looking into the room. Diana stopped at the sight of me but closed her eyes and continued walking, arching around me to get by.
Excuse me.
I watched as Diana left before walking into the library, now concerned.
You know, you are a terrible spy.
Huh? I looked at Shadow, realizing he knew that I had been listening and what had happened, and grimaced. Crap, I rubbed the back of my head, trying to calm myself, but the embarrassed nerves racing in my head. Sorry, I was curious about what was happening.
It's nothing to be concerned with, just a waste of time, really. I expect you not to do that again. Do you understand?
I don't think you guys can hear, but I can literally hear. Jeez. Oh god. As I was trying to say before that scream interrupted me, oh my god. I can literally hear my cat in the background meowing so loud. That is a very creepy scream. Yeah. It was better not to question it for now. I would learn eventually, but if Shadow wasn't going to tell me now, there was no way I would be able to force an answer out. Real quick, I'll be right back. Alright. I am back. And I have a cat with me. Here. Boo! That's a big close-up of my cat! Can you lay down? Here. Thank you. Yeah, so cute. Thank you. Are you happy now, cat? Oh. You purred. You're a purr baby now. It was better not to question it for now. Yeah, he is happy. It was better not to question it for now. I would learn. Where are you going? Okay, just get in my way, why don't you? Down. I will learn eventually, but if Shadow wasn't going to tell me now, there was no way I would be able to force an answer out of him. Shadow looked to me, observing me for a moment before nodding and turning from the table.
Well then, shall we begin?
I nodded, prepared to face whatever he had in store for me. What took me off guard was someone coming up suddenly behind me and placing a knife at my throat. What?
Dead.
I froze. What did she mean? Shadow crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow.
Shama, a little too early.
As the person released me and moved the knife away from my throat, I turned with a hard glare to see the cloaked woman who had been talking to Diana before. She obediently looked to Shadow.
I apologize, sir.
Back to your place.
Shama bowed, then quickly formed herself into a shadow, fading into the ground. I instinctively began to follow suit, but Shadow cleared his throat.
Pay no mind to that.
Okay. No, you can't just say that. What was that? I had a knife held to my throat without any warning. I was not prepared, and while that may have been some messed up point about war and not being prepared, Shadow was watching and could have stopped it. The only thing that ran through my mind was how my body suddenly became filled with adrenaline. Shadow stared blankly at the question and at me.
A misfired trap. Shama is meant to surprise attack you after I teach you your next lesson. Obviously there was a miscalculation, but that'll be fixed and done properly after the lesson is given.
I understood what wanting to be ready for the next time it happened, but something caught my attention, drawing my focus away from his words. As I stared at Shadow, I faintly noticed his hair swaying slightly in the air on his head. What the? There was no wind in the room. How was it moving? I focused my attention on his hair, wondering what it was doing as Shadow raised an eyebrow at me.
What are you staring at?
I shook my head and avoided why he looked at the ceiling. Why was I so focused on his hair? It was hair. As I thought that, however, his ponytail suddenly began to move like a hand tapping its fingers on Shadow's shoulder and on his waist. Whoa! I jumped back, pointing at his hair and earning a smug smile from Shadow. Why is your hair doing that? As Shadow suddenly glared at me and tensed up.
Are you more interested in the hair or in your training?
Sorry? I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't going to get anywhere by getting distracted, just like with my curiosity with Diana. If this was another lesson, then Shadow was teaching me properly. Still, my curiosity pecked wildly at me, wanting me to desperately ask about it. Hi, cutie pie. As I stared at his hair, I could feel something frightening me coil around my nerves. I didn't want to ask. It was better not to. Sorry, I'll pay attention. Shadow nodded, rolling his shoulders and forming a pure black dagger at his hand. He looked to me. I understood what he wanted me to do, having watched his hand carefully. There's no room for you, cat. Carefully, he was not one to actually talk me through anything. I focused on my hand, trying to imagine a dagger forming within it. I rounded my hand to form a shadow across my palm, knowing that I needed the darkness to help give it shape slowly, but eventually the hilt of a dagger formed in my hand, allowing me to grasp it. The blade quickly jutted out of the end, finally completing its formation before I lowered it to my side and looked up at Shadow.
Become aware of your surroundings. Your opponent is using the Shadow Plane, so you're at a disadvantage. But you can still defend yourself, as long as you pay attention.
Okay. That was why my attention was so important. I mentally wanted to slap myself for letting my curiosity take a hold of me. Now was not the time to mope, however, I had to focus. I nodded before looking around, trying to figure out how I was going to find Shama and defend myself before she got to me and killed me. I wasn't sure how shadows got around in other planes, but I was going to find out. I looked to the ground, not seeing anything pass by me, then looked to the light sources. If I remembered anything from the day before, it was that you needed to control the light to distract your target to protect your shadow from being used in sausage. What do you get? Stop it. Pick a spot, cat. I held my breath, trying to focus on the lights versus hearing my breathing whisper through the room. I wasn't going to let her take advantage of me. Suddenly, I faintly hear a flame whip to the side, causing me to turn to see Shama rushing at me with her knife. I quickly parried, pushing her back.
Good. Again.
As quickly as she had come, Shama vanished once again to hide. I could tell I was going to get a workout. Soon enough, she began to attack in plain sight, turned the room dark. Even with my shadow against me, I had to maneuver around it all. I continued to fend off her attacks for the entire day until I was excused to my room for the night. The day at last ended, and I wound up slowly walking towards my room. I was tired and ready to hit the pillow, but as I entered, I stared at who was there waiting for me. Seto? Seto stood in the middle of the room, staring hard at me as if I had done something wrong.
Do you know what a stone destiny is?
What is stone destiny? I had never heard of such a thing. Did it have something to do with the angels? I tilted my head, making Seto sigh and lower his head.
A stone destiny binds a person's entire life towards a specific direction. It could be for good, it could be for evil. However, when a stone destiny is set, almost nothing can stop it from taking its course.
Why are you bringing this up? Seto looked up at me and closed his eyes, resulting in explaining to me whatever was on his mind. What he told me, however, shocked me.
I believe that your fiancé is locked in a stone destiny.
What? It made no sense. James was locked in a stone destiny? What did that have to do with anything? Where did this come from? As Seto watched my expressions, he continued to speak.
There is only one way to forge a stone destiny, by making a deal with angels. If someone is willing to give angels something worthy, the angels can set and seal someone's life as if in stone. If anything threatens to destroy that destiny, the angels step in.
I still don't get it. That was it. That was why the angels were after me. If James was tied to a stone destiny, the only reason they were attacking me was because I was in the way of his fate. How could that be, though? What was his destiny? To become the next demon lord? Something in my mind clicked at the thought. Of course, that had to be it. I had taken James away from his destiny and was about to marry him. Of course, they would be after me. I sat on my bed, shocked and astonished at the news. I felt somewhat relieved that James and I had found a way to stop them, but I still felt the weight of the new information sinking into my thoughts. Seto stepped towards the door and closed it, looking to me.
Breaking a stone destiny is nearly impossible. Nearly.
Nearly? I looked up at him, anxiousness growing as he repeated the words. There was a way to fix this and set James free. Then how can we set him free from it?
By giving him enough energy to do so himself.
I stared. It made sense. But giving him energy meant probably sleeping with them. I didn't have much of a problem with it, but sex wasn't something I wanted to do just because it had to be done. It was better to make love when the people involved were in the mood to do so rather than because they had to. Seto turned back to the door.
He is a powerful incubus, but he isn't powerful enough to break through his destiny unless you help him.
Before he left, however, I stopped him. Something seemed off with Seto being the one to tell me. Seto, why are you telling me instead of Diana telling me?
She isn't aware of it. Not many demons know of it or even believe it to be an actual occurrence.
Oh. Interesting. Then how do you know about it? Seto seemed to stand still, letting silence linger in the air. The room began to feel off as Seto stood in his place. I had felt this feeling before, but I couldn't pin down where. Finally, Seto slowly turned his head to me, causing me to slightly gasp at what was revealed. In his gold eyes were crosses glowing at a dark black where his pupils were. The feeling of feathers once again danced around me, causing me to quiver slightly.
Does that answer your question?
I nodded slowly but frightfully. Seto was an angel. How? He looked like a demon. No one mentioned him being anything close to an angel other than him using holy magic. Did Diana not know either? How was this hidden? Seto closed his eyes and relaxed a bit as he pressed his lips into a fine line.
I love my lady. I would follow her to the ends of the 5 worlds if she demanded it of me. To see the man she was bound to wed here, locked by a destiny that would have taken my love away long ago. It's maddening. The longer he stays here, the more dangerous his destiny becomes. I've seen visions of what would come to pass if his destiny is fulfilled, and I will do everything to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay. I could see the jealousy in Seto's eyes once again. Something burned heavily in Seto's gaze and didn't dare to fade away as he gripped his spear in a white-knuckled grip.
My lady is a queen deserving of the world, not a harem girl for him to ravage in a cage.
Memories of the nightmare I had long ago flickered in my mind. Diana had been in the cage beside me. Did Seto see the same thing? I didn't get the chance to ask. Seto relaxed a bit and glared at me. I could feel a shiver rake up my spine as his words shook my core.
Do not speak of what I am to anyone, or I will set your destiny to die at your husband's hand.
Yikes. Yikes. Seto. Without letting me reply, Seto turned and left the room, leaving me alone to I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, what had happened. I felt the air in the room slowly drift back to normal, but I felt nowhere close to it. How was this happening? Why was this happening? Excuse me. Everything began to clash in my head, causing it to pound heavily in confusion and stress. My thoughts were interrupted as the door opened again, revealing James.
Love? Are you alright?
James? I couldn't control myself. I needed some relief from this entire situation, and I usually found it in James' embracing against his lips. I stood from the bed and walked over to him, wrapping my arms around him and pulling him into a kiss. James, taken by surprise, gasped against my lips before wrapping his arms around my waist and kissing me back. I let my mind sink into a blank state as I drowned myself in the kiss between us. However, I knew partly why I was doing this to give James energy. If energy was what he needed to fight this, then I was willing to feed it to him. James pulled away slightly and looked down at me. As he looked into my eyes, he stared in soft surprise and confusion.
Love, is everything alright?
I didn't want to tell him what happened. I didn't want him to know what was on my mind. I simply needed to help him in the only way I could, and I needed to not think about what was happening. I pulled him back and kissed him that much harder, wrapping my hands behind his head and gripping him tightly. James didn't question me further and tied his embrace around me, deepening the kiss. Our mouths battled in a dance of dominance, with James winning and me giving in to his passion. I found myself growing weak in the knees with the kiss between us, but at the same time I was floating in a mental cloud nine. My mind knew I could stop now. If he asked, I would come up with an excuse for my behavior, but I was slowly getting into the direction I was taking James towards. As one of his hands slowly slid down my back and hooked itself under my leg and behind my knee, I knew that this was one of my chances to pull away before I let myself dive into the most needed sexual ride. I needed him. There was no point in stopping now. I quickly grasped his shoulders and pulled him, walking us back towards the bed and eventually falling back over it with him kneeling between my legs. My mind became wildly frantic, shutting out the world, the war, the castle, the other demons, everything from my mind. All I needed right now was James and his embrace to take me away from the night and make me forget. James slowly pulled away, a soft pant escaping him as he stared down at me. His pupils were blown in pure love and lust, gazing down at me with a hazy stare. James, I need you right now. At the sight of James suddenly licking his lips, something in my core trembled as his fingers slightly dragged themselves along my side and gripped my waist. I felt myself melt into the mattress beneath me. I had unlocked the beast within James and I was ready to take him. Screw the world, from now the night belonged to us and us alone.
Allow me to indulge myself first.
I felt a hint of confusion run along my mind before suddenly feeling James pull up my shirt and ease it up, causing me to lift my arms above my head. What I didn't expect was him tying the shirt around my wrist and pressing my hands back near the bedpost. What? A deep chuckle echoed from James's chest as he brushed a hand through my hair, making me gaze up into his eyes. He didn't have to enthrall me to make me weak for him, but as his beautiful whiskey eyes began to glow a brilliant gold, my body began to warm and shudder in desire. I couldn't stop the moan from escaping my lips as James slowly knelt down and planted his kiss on my neck, dragging his tongue over my and slightly Nipping at it, I tilted my head to the side, giving him more space to work as he slowly began to ravish me. My legs naturally wrapped around his waist, pulling him closer to me, but as I did, James heavily rolled his hips against mine, grinding his knee against mine and forcing us both to release a gasp at the feeling. All I could think about was James touching me, holding me, kissing me, delving deep into me. My mind was spinning in endless waves of desire that I could barely control myself from pulling at my makeshift bindings and arching my back against James's chest. James merely paid in kind by moving his kisses to my lips, passionately dancing his tongue against mine in a battle of dominance. I was his to take, conceding defeat to his tango. I naturally tried to lower my arms back down to capture him between them, but James suddenly pulled away and forced my hands back above me, making me gasp and stare wide-eyed into James's dominant gaze.
Keep them there.
I didn't need to question him or his command. I nodded willingly, obeying despite knowing that his teasing would be the end of my sanity for the night. A smirk of approval slowly grew on his lips before he came back down and captured my lips again. I could only grip the fabric of my shirt around my hands, fighting every urge to disobey James as he traveled his mouth down my neck and chest, licking and kissing over my skin. Every part of me that was exposed to James became his to claim. Every touch he made on my body, every finger that traced along my skin made me shudder in absolute delight. My feet dragged themselves along the back of James's legs, teasing him and trying to urge him to come closer. As he did, took his sweet time undoing my pants and sliding them off of me before removing his own, leaving us bare for each other. James barely hovered his lips over mine, staring deep into my eyes as our passionate night began to take off. Our carnal desire for each other took over, unrelenting, as we moaned through the night together in a loving and passionate, I can't pronounce that word. I let everything go, tearing through the shirt and everything, dragging my nails along his back. His paint hiss between his grunts and pants made me lick my lips in almost a sadistic manner, but feeling him slow and tease me as punishment reminded me who was in charge. The only sound to accompany our loving pleas and moans for each other was the creaking of the bed and the echo of our rooms. We didn't give a damn who heard us. The entire castle would know who we belonged to, each other. Even as we picked together, the fixation of our love only intensified, driving us to kiss each other and ride through the afterglow of our sex together. James managed to open his eyes, staring down at me in both exhaustion and love as he ran a hand through my hair. I could only stare back, lost in his whiskey-colored eyes.
I am so unbelievably blessed to call you my own.
Aww. Me too, James. Our love fueled each other like a raging fire. We were destined to be together. Fuck anyone who said anything otherwise. We went to the bed that night in each other's arms, enveloped by the peaceful dark of slumber. To my surprise, no nightmares came that night. I woke up that morning by myself alone in bed. James was nowhere to be found, but I had assumed he was out training. We were getting closer and closer to the day when we were going into battle with the Demon Lord, so it made sense for him to be on topping of his training. However, I couldn't exactly stop the feeling of loneliness rushing through me. I at least wanted to see him off, but I had to understand this was preparation for war. The reward was me going home after all. I stretched and rubbed my neck, massaging out the tired soreness from sleep in my body. Day 5 in the world. Had it really been that long, I wanted to imagine it like a vacation, but the situation was the polar opposite. This was a week away from my normalcy, despite it being barely normal in the first place. Besides, I was marrying a demon. There was nothing normal about that. How much time has gone by in the human world? Right. Were people worried about me by now? Questions plagued my mind for a brief moment before I let out a sigh of defeat. I guess I'll figure it out when I get home, whenever that is.
Don't worry, darling. You'll be home soon enough.
Hi, Diana. I turned my head to see Diana standing by the door with a plate of warm pancakes. I would never figure out how Diana managed to make them, but stared at the plate made my mouth water.
Something warm. Here.
Thanks. Diana walked over and handed me the plate and utensils to eat with. I didn't even ask to start eating. The first bite was heavenly, and the expression on my face apparently made Diana chuckle.
I'm glad you enjoy it.
I blushed and swallowed the bite full in my mouth before looking up at Diana. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I love you, Diana. Diana chuckled as I continued to eat happily. As the thought crossed my mind, I couldn't help but look up and observe Diana. As I ate what she made for me, Diana was really doing a lot to help me get home, on top of having a war to deal with. Cat. Okay. Where are you? You just gonna stay there? Okay. I could tell that she had her reasons for doing so, but it seemed like there was a lot of work she had to do, and I felt a little sorry for her. Still, I was thankful that she was willing to help me leave this world for my own. Diana smiled a bit before looking away and sighing. What was on her mind?
Dear, may I ask you something?
Huh? Sure. What was Diana curious about? Diana turned her head to me and stared with a blank expression. I was a little concerned as to why I received such a stare, but I mentally shook it off.
Have you truly dealt with the angel problem? I haven't heard any word from them since last night, so I assume you have. But I need to be sure.
I stared at her for a moment, taken in her question. I really wasn't sure how to answer because I wasn't clear if we managed to get away from the angel's sight or not. They didn't invade my dream last night, that was for sure. But could that be even considered taking care of the problem? I took a breath before answering, going with my gut. I had to have dealt with that. They didn't visit that night, and I was going to help James become powerful enough to break him from his destiny. It was an interesting ride, but I was certain it would work. Diana nodded slightly before crossing her arms.
Very well.
Diana stared at me, digging into my gaze to try and find some sort of other answer in my eyes. However, I remained steadfast. I didn't want to worry her anymore if James and I could handle it on our own. According to Seto, we could. Diana sighed before turning to leave.
All right. May today go smoothly.
I nodded as she left. I hoped today would go smoothly as well. Another round of surprises would kill me. The minute I stepped into the library, Shadow turned from his scrolls to look at me. That was a first. Was he going to greet me properly now? He raised an eyebrow, threw me off, as if he wasn't expecting me. I walked to the center of the space, summoning my dark dagger and becoming mentally ready for more reactionary defense training. However, Shadow raised his hand out to me, causing me to relax a bit.
Your training is over.
Wait, what? What did he mean? I opened my mouth to protest, but Shadow held his stern gaze.
I have taught you how to defend yourself and how to traverse a plane that renders you temporarily untouchable. That was all I was required to teach. You are free to train on your own without a mentor now.
Okay. I felt like I was tossed into the deep end of the lake. I wasn't told anything about losing my trainer at any point. Still, I knew that what he was saying was the truth. He was right. I wasn't expected to learn how to really fight or how to beat someone. All this training was to give me the ability to defend myself. I completely forgotten about the reason I had even started. Still, I wanted to learn more. I felt that I was losing a golden opportunity and I wanted to push forward to learn something extraordinary. It was one thing to duck and dodge an invisible opponent, but it was another to truly use dark magic. Shadow turned away and went back to the table.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I must return to my research. We have a siege in less than 3 days, and I can't waste any more time.
That hurt a bit. I was wasting his time. I felt some part of me yelled that I had wasted my own time. Why was I even here? Shadow looked over his shoulder, locking eyes with me. However, he didn't say anything. I could feel his gaze burn into my eyes, judging my words and my desire to learn. I wanted to know something else. I didn't want my training here to end with me going off on my own. I had only trained for 2 days. For goodness sake, I wanted more. Shadow slowly straightened and turned to face me, crossing his arms.
Very well. I would like to see if you are able to perform a rather difficult spell.
Difficult spell? I suddenly became confused. What was it truly something powerful? I thought of 100 things he was going to teach me, but I remained at attention listening.
The spell I'm about to teach you will become your best weapon in battle. However, it takes a large portion of energy. You may not even stay conscious after casting it. Are you prepared to try?
Okay. I took a moment to consider it. While it seemed powerful, something about it seemed off. I could possibly pass out. Why would I essentially be jumping levels so fast? Was this something I should be afraid of? I wanted to know. I wanted to experience something new, and if this power was going to be, as he said, my greatest weapon, then I had nothing to lose. It would be worth the attempt. Shadow stared at me for a moment, most likely judging me like he usually did, before nodded and pointed to the wall away from the fireplace.
There.
I looked over and became lost. I saw my own shadow simply lying against the wall and flickering slightly from the firelight. What was he wanting me to do with it? Before my eyes, my trainer's own shadow crawled up the wall beside mine and began to peel itself off of the wall. I could not believe what I was seeing. It was almost cartoon-like. Soon enough, his shadow was standing on its own in mid-air away from the wall. He was teaching me how to use my shadow. I closed my eyes, trying to focus and concentrate before looking to my shadow and attempting to will it off of the wall. It wouldn't move, much to my displeasure, causing me to focus harder. It had to come off of the wall somehow. My shadow began to quake and almost shudder against the wall in defiance, making me glare at it hard. Come on! It shook violently before finally started to push itself off of the wall into a full three-dimensional being. I stared as it settled onto its feet and stood at attention for me as if it were awaiting my orders. This was by far one of the coolest things I had done. I felt my energy pulse draining slowly to maintain the spell and took a breath. Shadow, however, clapped his hands a couple of times.
Well done, human.
I grinned back at him before watching him form a dark sword in his hand and pass it to his shadow with a look of confusion at his silence. I tried to mirror him, forming a shadowy blade in my hand, the same way I had formed my dagger and passing it to my shadow. For some reason, staring at my shadow holding a sword seemed off to me, but maybe that was because I was a human casting this magic for the first time. There were always times for first. After all, this was definitely an impactful first. Shadow lifted his hand and pointed towards the door. Obeying his silent command, his shadow walked over to the door and stood guard. How did it know to do that without being told? Of course, Shadow wasn't going to tell me. I looked at my shadow and tried to think what I could have to do. There were so many things it was hard to decide. Gazing around the room, there were many places to go, however, became curious about the upper level of the library. I pointed to the air and at the upper balcony, feeling the need to verbalize my demand echo through my body. Go. Within a blink, my shadow crouched and leaped off of the ground, almost flying through the air. And grabbing onto the railing of the upper floor, I stared, jaw dropped as it vaulted itself over the ledge and turned back to face me. Whoa! I looked at Shadow, seeing him give a mildly impressed smirk towards my shadow.
I'm rather shocked. It's a shame to think that you're merely a human. You'd make a fine assassin.
Thanks, I guess? There was a genuine compliment. It was a little I was a little surprised to hear him say that without some kind of insult tacked on it, but I quickly shook it off. If I had learned anything from this experience, it was not to let my guard down. Luckily, I didn't. I smirked as I noticed Shadow's own entity trying to creep up on my shadow. In reply, I quickly shouted, "Defend!" My shadow acknowledged my command, and as if it knew where its enemy was, it turned and braced itself as my trainer's shadow tried to slice through it. Both words clasped, you causing a splash of dark matter to erupt from the impact, but as soon as it happened, my shadow dispelled his entity with a smirk of his own.
Well done. Very well done.
Thanks. I grinned from ear to ear, my shadow disappearing on its own. However, Shadow raised an eyebrow.
Your practice is not over. Again.
I felt another smirk grace my lips. Finally. I trained through the day, stopping every now and then when my energy was low and refueling with food and a break. I was happy to have this new ability, but he hadn't been kidding. It definitely wore me out. I finally arrived at my room, but as soon as I entered, something wasn't right. I felt something was off just stepping inside, but there was no one there. Was I just exhausted and imagining things? I cautiously entered, looking around. Nothing seemed to be out of place visually, but my nerves felt on edge. What was happening? Hello? Despite feeling silly speaking to an empty room, I had to see if anything or anyone would respond. Maybe they were hiding, maybe something was creeping around and would be surprised by my voice. There was no response, but I still didn't feel easy. Something was seriously wrong. I shook my fear from my mind and took a breath. This was not something to be scared about, I was sure of it. I walked further into the room only to hear the door slam shut. I turned around, seeing the door closed, making me panic a bit. Hey! Before I could walk over, however, I felt the energy in the room freeze. What? I looked around, now unsure of what to think. Whatever was here had succeeded in trapping me, so I needed to deal with whatever it was. Baring my teeth and stepping further into the room, I scanned the room for any movement. Who's there? What do you want?
You do not belong here, human.
Duh, no shit. The voice that replied sent fear rushing through my body. I looked around to try to pin down the direction of the voice, but it seemed to just echo around the room. Who are you? What do you want?
You meddle in things beyond your comprehension. Why must you attempt to toy with destiny?
I remained silent for a moment. This was an angel speaking in English to me. I didn't know why it was speaking to me now after they had attempted to wipe my memories and haunt me. Still, at least I would be able to learn more as to why. I glared into the room and continued to look around. I'm not toying with anyone. James chose to stay with me, and he and I are going to be married.
Raestro's fate has been set. You have no place in it.
Oh, screw you. Before I can react, I felt myself become enveloped in chains. I looked down to see my entire body wrapped in lines of white and gold chains, squeezing me tightly, and I winced in pain. Are you freaking kidding me?
Your mind is protected, but the spell will not last. Once it is faded, you will be properly baptized.
I hate you. No!
Love, what is going on in there?
I stared at the door, hearing James bang against it from the other side. The door was locked from the outside too. I glared at the door before shutting my eyes and calling out his true name. Raestro! With a flash of bright light, James appeared inside the room, shocked but suddenly enraged at seeing me in chains before he could rush forward to help me. However, his body was wrapped in chains as well. No!
Ah! What is this?
You cannot defy your destiny, demon.
My destiny?
I pulled against the chains around me, hoping to somehow break free. Despite it being to no avail, I continued to thrash and pull.
Your destiny is to rule this world. You cannot escape it.
My destiny is of my own making!
Your destiny is set in stone.
Are you kidding me, dude? The room around us began to glow and blind us as we were forced to shut our eyes tightly.
No matter. We will cleanse you both soon enough.
I hate you so much. Come on! I could feel the chains drag me beneath the ground into some sort of space. Cold waves rushed against my skin as I was dragged through a void I could not see. Where were we being taken? I didn't know how long I was out for. I had no way to tell how long I had been unconscious. All I knew was that James and I were in trouble. What was going to happen now that we were prisoners of the angels? Nervousness sank into my mind as I could do nothing but float into the empty darkness created by the angels who had confined me in the cocoon of chains. Slowly my nerves came back to life as I found myself awaking from the dark. What I didn't expect was to no longer feel chains around me, but the soft, familiar silk beneath me. What the? I rubbed my eyes and slowly opened them to see familiar gray ceiling. I couldn't be, no! What? Sitting up, my heart caught in my chest. I was back in my room. I was in the human world. What the? I'm so confused. Sitting up, my heart caught in my chest. I was back in my room. I was in the human world. How is this possible? Where's James? I jumped out of my bed and rushed for the door, pulling it open. James? I called out but heard no response. I rushed to the lobby and looked around to see it still intact. The air felt familiar and real, and I wasn't imagining things I couldn't have been. At the same time, I knew that I had the curse that the curse hadn't been lifted. I couldn't have returned to the human world unless I died. Was I dead? I began to panic. What was going on? Diana? My heart stopped at the sound of Diana's voice, more so from a moan that somehow reached my ears. I turned to where the sound came from, realizing the direction. A library. I rushed over and quickly pushed the door open, running inside. What I saw made my heart tear instantly into two. On the ground were Diana and James, both in a demon form, embracing each other. James had his face buried in Diana's neck as she clawed at his back, arching against him and moaning into the air. This couldn't be real. This wasn't real. Before I could scream, time seemed to freeze, causing the room and world around me to become still. I looked around, realizing that I could still move, and turned away from the sight.
Do you know why I am showing this to you, human?
Oh my god, I hate you! If this was the angel's attempt to prove something, it was sick and twisted. There was no reason to show this to me, especially when the one I was marrying was engaging with the woman who had wanted to take him away from me.
This was the time when Rachel was destined to return to the Abyssal Plains. Isaiah would have convinced him to go home, and they would have consummated their engagement before returning to take their birthrights.
Oh, no.
It is the truth. The only event that stopped it from happening was your voyeurism and intrusion.
Oh my god, you suck. I would not let him go.
How selfish. Humans are all selfish creatures. But that is to be expected when safety is handed to them on a silver platter.
The angel was toying with me, and I despised hearing every word it spoke. I turned back around and focused my attention on James, knowing that this was fake and remembering the real scenario.
Do you understand the full consequences of your actions?
I regret nothing. Upon my final word, the room went black and began to reek of blood. I stared to gag and covered my mouth and nose at the horrid smell. What was happening now? Where did the angel take me? Diana? I followed Diana's voice to see a crack of light slowly open, revealing Diana. Her face was painted with worry and concern, but upon opening the door, her expression shifted from concern to absolutely broken shock. From the light of the door, I was able to finally see the room I was in. Blood covered every surface, gore decorated every inch, and I was standing a couple of feet from the center where the three objects laid. Barely coated in blood, at the center was two broken adult-sized crowns, and the smaller crown, her parents and her baby sister, large enough to barely fit a newborn's head. Dinah's eyes darted throughout the room, both in disbelief and utmost horror. She barely forced herself to step into the room, dropping onto her knees in front of the items and bringing them to her chest.
No! No!
My heart broke at the sight of Diana. Tears were streaming down her face as she clutched the crowns against her chest.
Your selfishness cost a kingdom their beloved rulers, and a daughter her only family.
I couldn't say anything. I wanted to fight and shout back that I still didn't regret taking James away, but seeing Diana completely broken silenced any will to speak.
I see that you're beginning to understand.
Are you fucking kidding me? I remember Diana's voice echoing in my memory. She had moved on and was building a rebellion to eradicate the demon lord. As terrible as this was the inciting incident that gave Diana the motivation to destroy the demon lord. I looked away from Diana, no longer wanted to see her grieve, and glared into the ceiling. The past cannot be changed.
The past is a reminder of our mistakes.
The past is a memory to look back upon, not to bury yourself within it. Before my eyes, the room vanished once again, and I found myself surrounded by flames. What the?
Burn everything to the ground!
I looked around trying to find the source and direction of the voice. This was just an illusion, but the heat of the flames seemed too real to ignore or shake it off.
This was the last thing many lives were forced to see before dying at the hands of the madman demon lord.
Stop it! I gripped my head, shutting my eyes tightly. I didn't want to see anymore. I didn't want to be here any longer. If this was the angel's torture, this was truly unbearable.
Do you not see the price of your selfishness? You are the sole reason why millions of lives have been lost. You are the sole reason why an entire world is burning. Your love causes death. Your love will do nothing but bring you pain and suffering for all of eternity. Every minute you hold on to this false hope is another child dying, another kingdom falling, another battle waged. Give him up.
No. All at once, my head became filled with cries and screams of people I didn't know of. Pain from men, women, and children echoed in my mind as I gripped at my head, wanting it to stop. The heat around me was unbearable. I could barely stand it. No, this wasn't happening. I need to get out of here. I shouted to the skies, knowing the angel would hear me. However, I rushed forward through the flames surrounding me, hoping to break free somehow. What I managed to do was break through some sort of glass wall, destroying the world around me.
Love!
I fell to the floor, surrounded by shattered glass, causing my head. Shaking my head, I quickly looked up, recognizing the sight before me from my nightmare. James was bolted to the wall with a burnt cross over his chest. He stared wide-eyed at me, uncaring of the bubbling heat, dancing over the new scar as cloaked figures turned their heads towards me. I didn't have to look at them to know that they were angels. From what I knew, they had holy magic that could disable demon magic, so fighting with any form of magic I knew was not a good idea. However, I was a human. I had pure physical force. I quickly jumped up and squared off, ready to take on my husband's capture. In an act of supreme rage, James's body began to glow an intense gold color, the light flickering around his body like a raging flame.
Enough!
Oh my god! Within a matter of seconds, light suddenly engulfed the room, blinding everyone in it. I covered my eyes with my arms, trying to block the lights to no avail. As it finally faded, I looked up to see James in his demon form with the eyes fully glossed in gold.
This ends now!
The cloaked figures quickly conjured chains in their hands, but not enough to avoid James forming a familiar-looking gold pistol in his hand and shooting down his attackers. What shocked me was how they fell. Instead of them falling to the ground as the bullet ripped through the cloaks, the fabric burned away and the ash vanished into the air as if blown away by wind.
Filthy demon! Your acts shall not go unpunished! Send every angel in heaven at me! I will not let you touch her again!
Holy crap! Taking a chance, I rushed over to James and wrapped my arms around him. At last, my body felt at ease while holding him. As he wrapped his free hand around my waist, held me close. I could feel power radiating off of his skin, tickling my nerves. As a large gold pentagram appeared at our feet, a third cloaked being stepped up from the air from the far end of the room, stepping over the glass I had broken through and fallen on, James tightened his grip around me and aimed at the figure.
You cannot escape your destiny.
Oh, fudge you. As I finished, James fired a shot at the angel. The bullet ripped into the cloak, but the figure did not die. Like his companions, James didn't seem to care.
That was your one warning.
We do not fear you.
Come after her again, and I will teach you the meaning of fear.
Wow. With the angry snarl that reverberated through the room, the cloaked figure bent forward towards us, showing his veiny hands. From its back sprouted two large and proud white rings, riddled with hundreds of gorgeously placed feathers. However, before the angel could lunge for us, we sank into the ground. At last, escaping into the darkness, James gripped to me tightly as I held on to him, guiding me through the void where we were in. Into the darkness, we both sank. I shut my eyes, scared of where we were going, but knowing that everything was all right now that James was with me, I was safe in his arms. When we finally came out of the dark, we were standing in the middle of the war room where everyone seemed to have gathered.
Whoa!
Hey, what the hell?
Oh my god, you're all right.
Yeah. James and I looked around, seeing the shocked and surprised faces of the rebel leaders, the Incubi Brothers, and their wives. However, looking to Diana, her face instantly melted from surprise to anger. James released me as Diana suddenly marched at him, staring at her with a blank expression. The expression stayed as Diana slammed her palm across his cheek, the sound reverberating through the room.
Hey! Do you both realize how long you have been missing?
2 days.
Do you realize how many assets we have spent in preparing to find you both?
Diana!
Do not apologize! I don't want to hear it!
Diana turned and walked back to her spot, crossing her arms and curling her shoulders over herself.
If you two had died, this war would have been for nothing.
I found understanding what she had meant. Because of us, the war happened, so we had to take responsibility. However, now was not the time to get angry. Diana, we're back now. That's all that matters. Once again, silence took control of the air before Diana took in a deep breath and let out a sigh, relaxing at last. The very last thing I wanted was Diana to explode about this.
Were they angels?
Yes.
Did you kill them to escape?
2 of them.
Diana turned her head and looked at James in slight surprise.
You realize that killing angels of heaven will put a bounty on your head, correct?
Really? I silently gulped, remembering the angel swearing to punish James for what he did. James didn't seem to be fazed as he wrapped an arm around me.
Let them come. I will not let them hurt her again.
My cheeks warmed a bit as I looked up at James, seeing him smile lovingly at me, and I smiled back, seeing the deep and pure emotions he felt for me within his eyes. He would protect me with all of his might, and I would be with him for as long as I could. With a sigh, Diana rubbed her temple and looked around, glaring at me and James. Her look could kill, but I knew that beneath her anger she was relieved to see us. In a strange way, I could see the amusement behind her hard glare.
Well, now that everyone is accounted for, we are set. We are ready to march on to the Demon Lord's castle and end this once and for all. Are you two prepared?
The realization of the date hit me. If we had been missing for 2 days, then we were an evening away from heading out to the final battle. Fear quaked my core for a moment, but my embrace with James shook it away.
We leave in the morning?
That's the plan. Get some rest, you two. You both need it.
Alright, before we continue, I'll be right back. Without letting anyone interrupt her, Diana turned and left the room. I smiled a bit, knowing that deep in her heart she cared about us, the other rebels left as well, most likely going to prepare themselves.
Dude, what's on your chest?
Sam pointed at the cross on James's chest, making everyone look at it. I bit my lip, but James waved his hand dismissively.
A battle scar, nothing more.
A scar that still needs to be examined.
Eric walked over along with Damien, and both demons began to investigate it.
All right. Love, you can go back to the room if you want. I'll be there shortly.
I nodded, feeling sudden exhaustion hit me hard. I yawned and waved to the others before I walked out of the room, making my way towards our bed. Excuse me. I began to make my way back to my room, but stopped as I heard the sound of whispered voices sneak out of the room and sneak out through a barely open door.
So, we're all in agreement?
We have to. We don't have any choice anymore.
It will be for the better, I'm sure.
Indeed.
Does this have to do with them killing Diana like they said in the other thing, or is it different? I peeked in the room to see the interior of the library where the four rebel leaders stood in a circle. Sergeant leaned against the fireplace mantel while Rabbit and Shadow sat on the two empty chairs. Faye, however, floated to and fro from side to side in anxiousness. What were they talking about? I was so engrossed in figuring out what was happening in the room that I didn't notice the figure coming up behind me and pushing me into the room. Gah!
Sir, I found your student eavesdropping.
I'm not surprised.
I grimaced now that out in the open. The four stared at me with cold eyes as if they were ready to send me back to the human world as a corpse rather than going through with siege. I looked up at all of them as I slowly rose up to my feet, eyeing each leader as I considered running for the door. However, they each looked to each other in contemplation.
Say, you didn't hear anything, did you?
No, I swear.
What was the last thing you heard?
I suddenly felt the guards of each leader behind me readying their weapons. What the hell? Were they seriously going to kill me for walking by and eavesdropping?
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on, guys!
I felt the guards back away from me slowly, most likely still cautious of me. I let out a small sigh, happy that I wasn't going to die, and at least not immediately. Rabbit, however, looked at me with an ear twitching in curiosity.
Let us ask first. Do you know what has been truly happening with Diana?
I looked to Rabbit, knowing what she meant. Diana had been acting oddly, and it was not boding well. The more I saw her, I could tell that something was seriously weighing her down and influencing her words. Yeah, but what does that have to do with this meeting? As I answered, the other demons looked once again at each other before Shadow stepped forward nonchalantly.
Let's not play the ignorance game. We're going to assassinate the succubus when the war is over.
What?
Oh, what the fuck?
Way to just blurt it out!
Right.
There's no use in hiding it. We don't know how much she has heard.
I became massively confused. Why were they going to kill her? How were they even going to do it? What good would come out of killing her? Rabbit stood and walked to the fireplace, staring into the open flames. I could tell I was about to get an answer, so I listened intently, wanting to know why they were planning Diana's murder.
Diana we fear, has become corrupted.
Corrupted? What do you mean?
Meaning, she's going batshit crazy like the Demon Lord.
Oh god, I can hear my cat again. I furrowed my eyebrows that couldn't be. She seemed mostly fine, save for a few instances here and there. Sergeant, reading my face, pushed himself off of the mantel and stood up straight, reminding me of his power with his stance.
Human, you hate the Demon Lord as much as we do, correct?
I glared at Sergeant's stupid question. Of course I hated him. He had trapped me here and forced me and the ones I loved to join this war. There were no reason to even remotely like him. At my glare, Faye swooped in between me and Sergeant, waving her arms frantically.
Listen, we're not trying to make you mad, but...
This is ridiculous.
Shadow stood from his seat, now clearly irritated, and stepped towards me.
The succubus has gone mad, and if we don't end her life before she takes the throne, then she will become as mad as the Demon Lord.
Hello.
There is no saving her. Understand?
Oh, come on, Shadow! Seriously?
No, this is beyond unnecessary. All three of you are complicating the matter when all that needs to be stated is the truth.
But how can that be? How is Diana mad like the Demon Lord? None of this made sense. Diana seemed mostly right in her head. However, she was strong enough to lead an army and help me survive until now. She even aided the Incubi. These weren't the actions of a mad woman. Shadow rolled his eyes and went back to his seat as Faye pulled their hands behind their back, swaying a bit in the air.
Well, here's the thing. Here in the demon world, emotions and stuff can be uber powerful. Things like extreme grief or euphoria can even become energies on their own, while other feelings become, well, they can become very, very bad things.
Like madness?
Yeah. Madness is more than just a head-mind thingy. Here in this world, it's like a leech or a virus. When a demon catches it, madness just grows and grows until it consumes them, like it did with the Demon Lord.
Taking the new information in, I looked to the floor thinking of the Demon Lord and how psychotic he was said to have become. He waged wars and apparently enjoyed burning down kingdoms and slaughtering the innocent. If that was how far madness would take a demon, then I feared for anyone who was capable of falling into it.
You can become mad in multiple ways. By being born mad or being infected by it. Diana has fought the Demon Lord head on multiple times during the past 10 years. It was inevitable that she would catch the affliction.
You want to come up here? Come here. You can be on my desk, but not on my chair. Or you can catch madness? How was that possible?
We don't know, but this wouldn't be the first time someone who used to be sane went mad because they were around another crazy demon.
There was an uneasiness in the room. Something told me that none of them believed that was the true case. There's more, isn't there?
Huh?
I became bold. If Diana had to die, then there had to be a solid reason, and the madness excuse wasn't enough. Why were they planning it if none of them truly believed it? It's not just because she was mad, isn't it? Something else is wrong. The rebel leaders became silent, letting the tension lay in the air in plain view and giving me my answer. I was right, there was more to the story.
Who are you to question our reasons?
Shadow stepped up to me and leaned close to my face. As I stared to his black eyes, I can feel the world around me grow darker. He was truly a scary being, and his cold tone made me that much more afraid of him.
You're a human. You have no say in what we do here in this world.
Shadow, but...
We are not asking for your permission.
My anger suddenly exploded as I was pulled into the room and being treated like dirt. I didn't appreciate it one bit. So I stared up and got into Shadow's face. I'm not asking for yours either. I just want to know. Shadow and I continued to glare into each other before Shadow scoffed and turned away, crossing his arms. Rabbit shook her head, tapping her staff on the ground.
Regardless, we can't have you remembering the conversation we had here if we are set on stopping her.
I took a step back, now afraid. Were they really going to kill me? Face sensed my fear and waved her hands wildly.
Whoa! Hey, hold on! We're not gonna hurt you or anything!
That was somewhat of a relief, but what were they going to do? As I took a breath, Shadow spoke up, catching my attention.
I'm curious, human. Do you believe in the succubus?
What? The other rebel leaders looked to Shadow as he placed a hand onto his chin and thought and peered into my eyes.
Who do you believe should rule this world? The succubus? Or one of us?
And suddenly I became the focal point of the entire war's resolution. Why was my opinion important? I looked to the floor, trying to mull over his question and come up with an answer. Diana had saved my life and was doing everything to make sure I was going to go back to the human world and as safely as possible. Still, from how she was behaving, something was indeed seriously off with her. Was she really ready to take the throne? The four rebel demons before me, however, were all smart and balanced each other out in some shape and form. I can tell that they could all bring peace to the world in some way, but did Diana really have to be eliminated for that to happen? I felt like I was standing on a... I can't pronounce that. I knew that if I sided with Diana, then she would eventually be eliminated, but by these four, unless she found out beforehand, I could warn her. But what if these demons erased my memories or threatened my life? I was bouncing on the edge of a knife and had to pick a direction to fall. I closed my eyes and answered Shadow's question. They were right. She was very powerful, and if she truly was corrupted, then she needed to be cut off before she caused any damage. Thoughts of revenge bubbled in my mind, reminding me of how horrible she had been in the human world when she had tried to take the boys away from me. She had the gall to take my energy and test me at school as some sort of sadistic teacher. She had this coming to her. The four in the room stared at me, taking in my reply.
I'm fairly shocked.
Sorry.
Well, now what do we do with her?
I waited as the group looked to each other before Faye magically formed a small vial in her hand.
Should we give it to her? She's close enough to her.
Huh? Give what? Faye ignored me and passed the vial to Shadow, who began to imbue it with his own dark magic. Slowly the glass began to fill with a dark, inky liquid, stopping a quarter of a way up. What was it, poison? Shadow passed it to Rabbit, who did the same, creating a purple liquid within the veil and swirling it around to mix the liquids together. The contents separated a bit, causing a strangely beautiful gradient effect. As Sergeant took a hold of it, it began to fill with green liquid, becoming mixed with the poison already within the veil. The vial, whatever you pronounce that. Finally, Faye took the vial back and shoved a cork to the top before shaking the mixture violently. As they did, a strange gray energy began to go around it, pulsing like a heartbeat and slowing until it eventually faded away.
There.
From the tone of their voices, the decision to truly go through with this solidified. They all were serious and wanting Diana to die. I felt a little pity for what was to come. Faye turned and floated to me, holding out the vial.
We were gonna give this to her during the final celebration after the siege, but we're pretty sure that guard will be watching her like a hawk.
Then why give it to me?
Because she trusts you. I have a theory that she'll pull you aside, away from everyone else, to have a little chat before you're sent back to the human world.
How can you be so sure? Shadow smirked.
Because when we tried to send you home, she tried to slip in an extra item onto the spell reagent list. And according to my recent studies, it is actually very important to demons like her. I suspect that she was going to give it to you as a gift.
Since the gate spell didn't work, she probably took the time to find it herself. She'll take you aside and give it to you before you leave, which will give you the chance to be alone with her.
Okay. Hang on a second. I was surprised Diana was going to give me something important. I was curious as to what it was, but my thoughts trailed off as I stared at Faye's hand, which were still holding the vial of poison.
I guess it was a good thing you listened in then. Makes our job a bit easier.
I slowly reached down and took the vial, feeling a very subtle heartbeat emit from it. It took every ounce of will I had to not drop it in surprise. Was this thing alive? I brought it close and examined it, practically feeling its power. If Diana was as powerful as they expected, then how powerful was this poison? I was paying such close attention to the vial in my hand that I didn't see Faye swooping behind me and grabbing my head. What the?
Sorry.
All at once my mind began to become fuzzy and light. What was happening to me?
Is that really necessary?
Yeah, was that really necessary?
It will lower the risk of her telling anyone about our plans until the chance arises. When it does, she'll remember everything and know what to do.
I would forget about this? How would this make sense? I didn't get the chance to fight back until my vision blacked out. I shut my eyes and felt the world spin around me before I relaxed as silence overtook my senses. My body floated for a bit in an empty void before softly landing on a surface, causing me to open my eyes and look around. Huh? What happened? I was in the hallway on the floor. How did I get there? I was on my way to my room. Weird. I stood up, brushed myself off, and looked around, hoping that no one saw me snoozing on the floor. When I noted that the coast was clear, I quickly continued on my way to my room. I must have been more tired than I saw it. I finally returned to our room and flopped onto the bed, letting the events of my time in the Abyssal Plains replay in my mind. I was trapped here, hunted by angels, and soon enough I was about to go marching into the battle against the demon lord for my freedom. The more I thought about it, the more surreal the feeling became. I was going to be in a room meeting a powerful adversary first face to face and set myself free of the curse he brought down upon me. And that at that I was captured by angels and almost killed by them made the time I had spent away from the human world very wild. It felt like a dream, but I knew it couldn't have been one. This was too vivid, too real to be even close to a dream. As James entered the room at last, I smiled and stood walking over and wrapping my arms around him as he returned my embrace.
God, I was so worried about you.
And I was worried about you. Aww. We held each other, locked in silence and unable to say anything more. We had been in a heavy predicament and we escaped. Sure, we were probably branded now, but we escaped nonetheless. All we could do in the moment was hold each other and listen to our synchronized heartbeats. As the thought of tomorrow danced in my mind, I began to fear even more. Was I ready to go to battle? Was James? Were any of us, for the matter? We were about to walk into the final battle of the World War. Would we survive? Would I live to see James afterwards and feel his embrace again? Tomorrow brought too many questions to think about, and I became frustrated and scared. I needed to hold him and treat the night like it was the last night of the world. Tomorrow was unpredictable, but tonight was guaranteed. I slowly glided my hands to cup his cheeks. To cup his. Ugh. I slowly glided my hands to cup his head, looking up at him and staring deep in his eyes. I felt his hands gently slide across my waist, softly grasping my hips as he stared patiently at me. A rush of courage ran through my body as I gently pulled him forward and captured his lips with my own. My eyes fluttered closed as I took a deep breath, taking in his scent, his warmth, his love for me. I was blessed to have this man as my own and to see him claw through destiny to remain with me and be mine. As he slid his hands up my back and hugged me closer to him, I can tell he felt the same. My head tilted back as James began to trail kisses down my chin and onto my neck, causing me to arch back a bit and press my chest against his. As his teeth lightly grazed my skin, and a wild shiver ran up my spine. There you go, sausage. His hands tightened around my waist and tugged me hard against his body as he ravished my neck and shoulder in kisses and licks. My own hands began to wander his hair, combing through his black locks. For one more night I would forget about everything except the feeling of this man and I making love. It wasn't long before James and I wound up in bed with me straddled over his lap with my back to his chest, us in only our bare minimums. James marked every inch of my body with his lips and tongue, desperate to make me quake in his arms from the pleasure. I couldn't help but let myself grind over the hardening lengths in his boxer briefs, my own core lightening in desire for him and slightly craving to just ravish and ride. However, James's hand drifted along my body, making me submissive to his touch and guidance I was left to moan and mew at his fingers dragging themselves over me and eventually teasing me beneath my clothes. The wild moans that wanted to erupt from me at his strokes filled my head with a lustful haze as James began to enthrall me. He kissed hard over my shoulder. I began to bite my lip, trying to control them.
Don't hold it in.
As if to emphasize his command, he began to remove our last articles of clothing, turning me around in his arms and pinning me against the bedpost. I had to wrap my legs around him to keep myself up as he pressed his hips against the wood of the bed. I looked deep into James's eyes, becoming lost in them as I finally let go, feeling him take me at last and letting the pleasures ripple through my body in waves. My arms wrapped themselves around his neck as he pressed me against the wall and began to drive into me in a loving but hard. I can't pronounce that. My energy was slowly draining, but I didn't care. My mind was becoming a mess, but I didn't care. All I gave a damn about at that point in time was becoming a mess that was James and I holding each other and riding through the immense pleasure between us. James knew everything about me, how to make me melt, how to make me keen. He loved to use everything in his power to make me feel absolutely loved and amazing, while I did my best to make him feel the same. Even as the end began to crash through us, our eyes spoke volumes of our deep passion and love for each other. My heart pounded wildly for James, and I dared to claim him as mine. He was completely and utterly mine, and I was completely and utterly his. Joyful tears gently dripped down my eyes from the feelings bursting in my heart, but I gripped James close, desperate not to let go. He did the same, pressing his lips to mine and capturing every loving sound I made for him. I lost count of how many times we let ourselves go. I became absorbed in his kisses, his touches on my body, our love that I was barely awake by the time it all ended with his arms around me. His breathing became my guide, and his body my solace. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. My hands gripped to him as my body naturally cuddled close to him, taking in his warmth. A small chuckle echoed from him as James petted my hair.
I love you so much.
I love you too, James. I will never let you go. We would survive. We would be okay. I felt safe in James's arms, and I'm sure he felt safe in mine. We would return to the human world and be okay. Tomorrow would decide everything. The day of the siege had finally dawned. We had arrived at the demon lord's castle, and sorry, sausage. And we were as ready as we could be. Many armies bearing different banners and colors washed over the grounds before the castle, ready to rush in and lay waste to the demon lord and the remainder of the forces. All of us shared to a common enemy an enemy, and upon his demise would all finally know some form of peace. Even during the roll call of the major generals, the air became full of determination and pride.
Mirth! Avarice! Nadia! Fiorna! Aradum!
Each name called became a mark on history. This was the war to bring freedom or destruction to the demon world. If the rebellion didn't win this fight, then this war would never end. If the rebellion won, then the world would become united in a hopefully peaceful rule. The hour before the battle was set to take place, my thoughts instantly ran back to our final meeting in Lilith Castle. Diana had pulled the leaders and us together, instructing us on how exactly to proceed.
Zero, You will be joining Shadow and Sergeant in the front, taking care of the main army head-on. I expect that you will come out of it alive.
Yes, my lady.
Rabbit, Faye, you are in charge of range attacks and defense. We cannot allow any of those blasted imps getting to us from behind.
Yes, ma'am.
As Diana looked at me, I grew slightly fearful. I had to get into the Demon Lord's castle, but... Excuse me. But how exactly did Diana plan on getting me there?
You and your fiancé will take the side route straight to the castle.
Wait, huh?
We've organized our army to have our strongest on the front lines and against the tree line, giving us a side route for you to make your way straight to the castle.
If anything trickles into the side route, you'll be able to handle it. However, there is something I must ask of you.
What is it?
If you are indeed attacked, you need to defend your fiancé the entire way there. Do not let him use his energy.
Absolutely not.
When you get to the castle, I will be fighting one-on-one with the Demon Lord. If something should happen to me, then I need you to take over.
Okay.
She is not ready to fight him, and you need to be at full strength to finish him off.
The humans should be able to handle a few imps.
I stared, listening and reaffirming the order. I couldn't lie, I was nervous. However, I was determined enough to see this through. I looked over at my fiancé with a confident smile. I got this, don't worry. Despite the worried look in his eyes, he nodded and held my hand, trusting me in my decision to agree with Diana's command. Diana rolled her shoulders and looked at the map draped over the war table between us all. Her gaze pierced into the parchment as the aura around her body pulsated in anger.
I will fly ahead and meet the Demon Lord head-on. No matter what happens, I will not allow that monster to live.
Okay, the pure determination and anger in her voice practically sent a shiver down my spine. She was set on seeing this through to the end, and I was sure that she was willing to even die if it meant taking the Demon Lord with her. The remaining Incubi and the wives were asked to stay behind the army and guard the main base, where Rabbit and Faye were stationed. They needed as many eyes as possible in the back of the battle, so the four couples were perfect to keep things in check. As they argued, the meeting ended and a mental preparation had begun. The idea of the upcoming battle scared me, sending waves of fear and worry up and down my body in response to the thought.
Nervous?
Yeah. I would be lying if I wasn't. James smiled and held my hand tightly before bringing it up and kissing over it.
No matter what happens, we will end this, and you will see the human world again. You have my word.
I listened to him speak before nodding, taking in a deep breath. Everything would be okay. We would be fine. I had to believe in myself and get us to the castle when the time was right. I swear, if we see Malix in this, I'm gonna be pissed. Oh, seriously, Cat? I can't see. Lay down. I can't see to read. Sorry, sausage. But you were in my way. Like a beacon, our forces became the banner of hope and strength for the rebellion. At the sight of Diana, many soldiers bowed or stared in awe and inspiration. Maybe it was her presence, or maybe it was for what she stood for. But as Diana stood at the cliffside of the mountain, the air became full of energy and power. My fiancé, Rabbit Faye, and I stood behind her as Diana stood on the ledge of this cliffside. addressing the rebellion of their final battle, her voice echoed across the field, booming and reverberating through the air like thunder.
Milites! Et hoc liberati sturei tramcun tuis omnibus conversiris! Sto vobiscum reducitic vos ad spem! Nocte! Lavabir mur! Arcem! Hostium sanguine!
Making sure I don't run over my cat. What is she saying?
She said that she stands with them and will help them gain their freedom from their enemy. Tonight, the Demon Lord's castle will be bathed in blood.
Really?
I don't think she means it literally, but she's riling up the soldiers for war, as she should.
I nodded as I stared at the back of Diana's head. A part of me felt a little intimidated and jealous of the power she had. She really could make the armies bow to her and obey her every whim? At the same time, I knew that she was doing the right thing for this world.
Ele Dio dominati sunt nostri. Nos destruet, eum mitere, profundissimum, inferni detractos.
Okay. Rabbit and Faye stepped forward and held their hands out towards the castle, focusing their energies and forcing the stone walls around it to crumble and dissolve down into the earth. Diana summoned her saber, letting it shine brilliantly as the purple taint over her skin began to twist and turn. Before my eyes, the taint on her back shook shape, lifting off of Diana's skin and morphed into the set of demonic wings. I could only stare, jaw dropped, as Diana's body lifted off the ground and began to fly over the legions, slowly gliding towards the castle.
To war! To battle!
At her final command, Diana's wings pulsated in the air, flapping gracefully as she swooped down and forward. She was charging and flying to the castle while saber bared and ready to spill blood. As the armies below began to bellow and march forward, Rabbit took a hold of my shoulder and turned me away from the castle to face her.
Come, we must hurry.
Understanding the need for the urgency, I nodded and rushed forward with the rest of the Incubi towards the slope down the mountainside.
Everything is in order. Sergeant Diana's guard are at the front lines, while Shadow is with his legion to the west.
All right.
What of our route?
We've done what we can to keep your way clear. We'll try to make sure the battle won't break through the path.
Okay. I nodded, feeling the need to rush Nip at my heels. Pushing me forward, my fiancé seemed to agree, gripping my hand and walking at my pace alongside me. However, as we finally arrived at the forest line, Faye and Rabbit stopped, looking back at us.
Straight through here. The sound of the war will always be on your right, so do not get lost.
You'll be fine, though. Just follow the tree line.
In sync, my fiancé and I nodded in acknowledgement before turning to see the other brothers and their wives. So this is it.
Princess, brother, we'll see you in the end.
We have faith in you. You'll make it there, and we'll return to the human world soon.
I'm gonna be so mad if we see Malix again. Just like in Sam's route. I'm gonna be so pissed.
Kick his dead body a couple times for me, alright?
Oh, you agree with
right
me?
in the head.
Oh, you agree with me, Kat? Thank you. Hang on a second. Don't let me run you over. Come here. I swear you're so annoying, Kat.
We'll be right here rooting for you and watching your back, okay?
Alright.
We'll finish this and rush in as soon as we can, alright?
Make sure you kick some serious ass.
All
Show that
right.
old goat what he gets for messing with you.
We'll win this. We know we can.
You can do this. We'll see you soon, okay?
Okay. I smiled despite the nerves running through my body. I held on to my fiance's hand and gave it a hard squeeze before receiving one back in kind. We'll finish this, then we'll go home. The group nodded before I slowly turned and looked into the tree line, took a breath. Took a breath and rushed forward. Matching my speed, my love followed, waving through the trees behind me to not lose sight of me. Trying to make room for my cat. The journey was surprisingly uninterrupted. The sound of the war clashed beside us, causing me to cover my ears a bit from the volume, but I shook my head and pressed forward, not wanting to become distracted. The goal was to get to the castle, so I had to focus. Before I could, however, I was pulled back by my fiancé, barely missing an arrow fly past my nose. Whoa! I quickly turned my head and spotted a small group of imps creeping towards me, with one reloading his bow with another arrow. I quickly grabbed my incubus and focused on making us become one with the shadows of the tree we were under. As the dark consumed our bodies, I felt my energy pulse from the amount being used. Still, I successfully dragged us both into the Shadow Plane.
What the Shadow Plane?
I looked back at him and smiled with a nod, knowing that he was completely unaware of what I had learned in my training. After all, he had been focusing on improving himself. I lowered my hand into his and grasped it, rushing forward and pulling him along. He managed to trip a bit before following along with keeping my pace. Even as some hideaway scouts and trickling soldiers came in our path, we simply ran through them unseen. It took the man behind me a bit to take it in, but he quickly adjusted, knowing that now wasn't the time to focus on that. I, however, felt my energy quickly drain. I was maintaining two people in the Shadow Plane after all. It only made sense that it used more energy. Still, I wanted to get as far as I could before returning to the real world. I gripped onto my incubus's hand hard as I began to wane, slowing my run and feeling a heavy wave of dizziness consumed my mind. Soon enough, warmth returned to my body, and we were both sent back to the corporeal demon world. Of course, it couldn't have been a perfect straight journey with a couple of finally guards at the edge of the tree line waiting for us. Yeah, I'm gonna be so mad if we sing Alex. Oh, God. A band of remaining imps caught my eye, taking in that I had successfully maneuvered around their lines and reached them. I grimaced and glared at the imps, seeing the group of three rush at us despite the weak feeling in my knees. However, I had one last trick up my sleeve. I focused on my shadow, commanding it to come forth and defend me. My incubus and the imps gasped as the dark shadowy figure of me sprouted from the ground and formed a large sword in her hand. I glared at the imps and pointed at them, feeling my energy quickly drain once again. Get them! On my command, my shadow rushed forward and began to slice through the imps, effectively discounting their limbs from their bodies and cutting them open. Each tried to block, but only managed to have their attacks phase through my shadow like mist. They couldn't touch me, but I couldn't kill them. I smirked as my shadow quickly zipped between them in figure eights, ripping each of them apart before letting them fall to the ground, bleeding out and wailing in pain. That was all I can do before my energy finally forced my shadow back into the ground, a wave of exhaustion rolling through my body. I began to fall forward exhausted. My fiancé, however, quickly rushed forward and caught me in his arms.
Whoa! Are you okay?
Huh? I looked up to see Jane staring down at me with deeply concerned gaze. We were safe for the moment, so I merely smiled up at him with a nod. I'm fine. I promise to protect you like you protect me. James let out a small laugh, kissing my forehead and hugging me to him.
That you did. I'm so proud to call you mine.
I hugged him back, feeling relieved that we had finally arrived at the castle and we were about to rush inside. As we slowly pulled away, James lifted me up and helped me to my feet.
Will you be all right?
I nodded, shaking out the exhaustion from my mind. I was ready to end this. I looked up at the castle gates and felt a rush of determination run through me. Let's go finish this. With that, James and I rushed forward to the castle. The final battle had begun. Okay, no Malix. Okay. I would have been so pissed. The ringing sound of clashing swords greeted me and James as we sprinted into the castle and towards the main hall. James placed a hand in front of me as I spotted the battle waging at the foot of the throne. I can't pronounce that word. Diana and the demon lords slammed their swords against each other over and over in violent repetition, with Diana leveled her tall opponent to fight. Just from the force behind their wings, you would think that their swords would break and bend. The sound of their steel, however, could not cover the snarls that erupted from each of them. They pressed against the clash between them.
It's over, you brute bastard! We'll see about that!
With a heavy grunt, the demon lord pushed his sword forward with a pulse of red energy, causing Diana to fly back and slam into the pillar with a painful thud.
Ah!
Oh my god, I hate the demon lord. Diana crumbled to the ground, her wings instinctively folding in against her back from the impact. However, it only took a second for her to recover and look up with a rejuvenated glare. Vaulting off the ground, Diana flew at the demon lord once more and slammed her sword into his, a large burst of purple flames erupting from between their weapons.
I will send you to hell where you belong!
James and I watched in silence as Diana and Demon Lord danced their deadly duel, not wanting to get in the way of either their rage. After all, James was merely a backup, as Diana seemed fine so far. For some reason, however, as I stared at Diana, something about her hits looked almost effortless, like something was guiding her sword to land each strike. Was she that skilled in combat? After a flurry of deadlocks, Diana finally managed to swing her sword at an angle, slicing the back of the demon lord's hand and making him drop the weapon.
You!
The demon lord quickly stepped back and reared his other hand back, forming a large red orb in his hand. However, as soon as he thrust it forward, it began to dissolve and dissipate in the air, vanishing completely before it reached Diana's body.
What?
Diana stared in shock at the occurrence, taking in that his attack didn't hit her. Before she slowly grew a smirk on her face and a golden glow over her blood-red irises.
Looks like you're all out of energy.
With another angry growl, the demon lord repeated his action, only to stare in disbelief, as if it evaporated into the air. It was large enough when in his hand, yet it vanished all too quickly. Something was wrong. Diana didn't seem to care as she lifted her hand back behind her and formed a large purple orb in her palm before shooting it forward. The orb slammed into the demon lord's chest and pushed him back against a pillar harshly, forming large cracks in the stone at the impact.
It's over!
With her battle cry, Diana gripped onto her saber with both hands and flew forward, charging to skewer the demon lord through the chest. As she began to fly forward, I gasped at the sight of white feathers only painting over Diana's demonic wings. Angels were here. Wait! Diana wasn't listening. Her eyes became completely glossed over in a gold color as a strange white glow began to emanate from her from like a holy light and guided her forward towards her intended victim. Within a mere blink, Diana had run her saber through the demon lord's chest, piercing through his heart and impaling him against the pillar. Holy crap, dude. James and I could do nothing but stare in shock at what Diana had done and what was happening to the succubus in question. Her body let out almost an ethereal white glow as she snarled into the demon lord's face.
May Satan take you and tear you apart in the pits of hell.
Damn, Diana. My body shuddered in fear at the sound of her voice. While she naturally had some sort of demonic resonance as she spoke, something else was laced in her voice, giving it almost a celestial lift and tone. I don't know if I pronounced that right. The demon lord's eyes glazed over and soon lost their light as he ever so slowly went limp over the blade embedded within him. Blood slowly dripped from his mouth and onto Diana's forearm. Diana, however, released the handle of her blade and glided back, shaking her arms to rid them of the demon lord's blood. Despite what I normally expected from Diana, the succubus didn't seem to care that her mortal enemy had fallen at last. She didn't even seem to care that her wings had become angelic and covered in beautiful white feathers. If it wasn't for her tainted demon skin and horns, I would imagine Diana at the moment to be confused as the angels I imagined from the human world. The reality of the situation, however, was apparent. Something was wrong with Diana.
It is done. It is over.
I looked to James, seeing him cautious but deadly glare burn itself into Diana's form as she looked up to him, eyes still glazed over in a gold glow.
It isn't truly over, is it?
No. I feel like there's something more to this. Diana stared at the pair of us for a moment before lowering herself onto her feet and on the floor and letting her new angelic wings fold against her back patiently. With an almost sickeningly sweet smile, Diana lifted her hand towards James and beckoned to him.
You are correct. You must take your throne, Restrau.
Diana? My anger flared at the sound of his true name escaping her lips, but my soul began to quiver in fear. Diana was being controlled by angels. Are you freaking kidding me? And now she seemed to be an instrument for James's destiny. James, however, remained at my side, glaring hard at him, still with the hand across my body in protection.
You do not have permission to use my name with such familiarity.
And why do you say that? I am the queen of the demon world now.
Diana!
And you are my betrothed.
Diana ran her hands through her hair and over her horns. arms, dragging them down her neck and over each curve of her upper body seductively. This was definitely not Diana. No, it wasn't.
My mind, body, and soul are completely yours, as is the domination of this world. I share these pleasures and power with you, with the purest love from the bottom of my heart, as your true, universally intended bride.
Diana, James reached his hand back and took my hand, knowing that her words were digging into my mind with edges of betrayal and annoyance. I knew James wouldn't accept her, but I also knew that this was not Diana, so who knew what the angel controlling her would do next? Diana tilted her head to the side, slowly lowering herself onto her knees and stretching her arms by her side, baring herself to us.
Unless you desire me to be your slave, I will happily give you the throne and eternally serve you until the end of time.
Oh my god.
Enough! Release her and reveal yourself, Seraph!
I gripped James's hand, staring wide-eyed at Diana as she simply chuckled, then guided her hands together, pressing her palms between her breasts and leaning back to stare at the high marble ceiling.
This child of Lilith is offering herself to you, demon, yet you refuse to take it.
You know my answer.
It is a foolish answer. This demoness can become a vessel of power for you, the mother of your lineage. What more can you desire that the human can hope to provide?
Stop it! This time I had to interject. This was wrong and underhanded. Whatever spell Diana was under gripped her tightly enough to become some sort of twisted submissive to James, and no part of me appreciated it. The angel was some sort of sick and twisted being that needed to be stopped somehow. Oh. That's a screenshot I can use for a thumbnail. I like that. James finally stepped forward, forming a sword in his hands and staring down at it in serious thought.
An angel like you can never understand the desires I hold.
That is because your desires are misplaced. You know deep in your heart that you desire to rule over this world. Your demonic blood craves the power.
I watched James gaze deep into the steel of his blade, locking eyes within himself. Still, he continued to speak.
It is true that some part of me wishes to rule this world. Some darker, unfeeling shadow of the past that was raised to live and become the ultimate lord of this plane.
As James gripped the handle of his sword tightly, he shifted his gaze to Diana's body.
But my heart knows where it belongs. With the human who loves me as I love her!
James! My heart fluttered in my chest at James's words, feeling every ounce of passion and determination embedded with each sound. Diana, however, let out a dark laugh.
Love, how fleeting. Your defiance comes from such a weak emotion.
As Diana finally straightened back up, I stepped back from the sight of her eyes, and instead of black pupils, her golden eyes held two dark crosses. Burning sight within her lost irises, the smirk on her face intensified, almost like I can't pronounce that, cat's sickening grin.
Allow me to show you a power greater than love!
With a hard flap of her wings, Diana jutted forward, forming another saber in her hand and arching it across James. Her target countered and replied, clashing his sword to hers with his heavy clang. I instantly jumped back away from the fight as James and Diana began to clash swords. Again and again, James's face showed his pure concentration as Diana cackled in both an insane glee and obsessive desire.
Fight however you like! You cannot escape your destiny!
I will, and you will not stop me!
Oh my god. The speed of their clashes increased. The rapid sounds of steel beating steel crashed through the air like a wave of violent drums. They were equally matched, and neither seemed to be close to giving in. How long would this fight go on for? I knew Diana was probably exhausted from the fight, but the angel was working through her, so there was a chance that her exhaustion wouldn't matter. Then again, James had not lifted a finger yet in this war, so he had energy to spare. The entire situation became full of confusion and concern as James and Diana continued to duel without hesitation or need for air. As James took a heavy swing towards Diana, the succubus leaped back and sank gracefully on her feet, using her wings to ease her descent and stance while she licked her lips.
Love is a fleeting game. Those who expect it to bring happiness will only experience sorrow in the end.
You're wrong. I was tired of this angel trying to get in between of me and James. Enough was enough. I stepped forward, trying to desperately to find more energy within me to fight alongside James, but spoke out regardless. You don't know anything about love.
I know more than you ever will, human. I've lived for eons serving heaven, and have watched your kind rant and rave all about love and its existence.
Diana lifted her hand to her chest, grasping it over to where her heart was, and almost laughed at me at my words.
You humans use love for the most meaningless of things. I love him, I love her, I love this, I love that. You claim love to be a powerful emotion, yet you can't even give it the power it supposedly deserves, as you use it for everything.
Oh my god.
I've watched that word fall on deaf ears. I've seen lives destroyed, despite love guiding them forward. The mere word has become a throwaway amalgam of letters, used to express minor joy for things that will decay and die in the end.
Is this angel being serious right now? Love is stronger than you think. I knew deep down that the emotion of love was stronger than this angel could ever have imagined. This wasn't something it could debate against when I had experienced it firsthand with the man it was trying to take away. Diana laughed and shook her head. I can't pronounce that at my exclamation before stretching her arms out to the side.
Love is weak! I have claimed the body of a succubus who is full of true love, and not even her love could stop me!
I stared wide-eyed at Diana. She was in love, even more so she had a pure and true love. But if love was the factor behind control, then something was off. I shook my head and glared once more at Diana, burying my gaze into her eyes, the angel who was controlling her movements. You controlling her has nothing to do with love. You're taking advantage of her being weak from the fight with the Demon Lord. Finally, Diana's face melted into a glare as she bared her teeth at me and growled.
You know nothing! Less than nothing! Filthy, unclean human! You open your mouth and spout nonsense and forget your place in the universe!
Diana's saber began to glow an unfriendly white color as Diana's hands began to quake holding it. Was Diana fighting back, or was the angel's anger shaking her limbs with rage? I wasn't able to tell.
I will erase you!
A hard flap of Diana's wings made Diana fly forward towards me, sword held high to rip me into two. However, her blade was met with James's as he rushed up and guarded me.
You!
James pressed back against Diana's saber, his body glowing a dark gold color in response to her ever-growing aura.
Your battle is with me, Angel. I will not let you touch her.
Right. But thank you, James. With a heavy snarl, Diana pressed herself against the deadlock, leaning towards James and practically frothing at the mouth.
I will make you yield!
Unaffected by her scream, James summoned a burst of yellow energy forward, knocking Diana back towards the throne I can't pronounce that word. Diana flipped back and floated in the air gracefully, shaking her head before sneering at James. The demons sprang at each other once more, slamming their swords together in hopes to push the other away or strike their opponent down. Purple and gold clashed through the room, the speed of their duel growing exponentially with each hit and parry. Watching Diana, however, I can tell that exhaustion was hitting her hard. Physically, her head became wild and thrown by adrenaline instead of with purpose and intent to kill. The angel wouldn't be able to hold on for long. James was putting up a good fight despite this, easily blocking and dodging her attacks before pummeling a barrage, I can't pronounce that word, of his own, laced with gold energy that burst between their swords at each hit. As soon as an opening became available once again, James gripped onto Diana's wrist and twisted it back, making her release her saber with a painful scream and causing him to drop his own sword.
Enough of this!
Oh boy. Using the momentum of his attacks, James spun Diana around so her arm was almost dislocated behind her and slammed his feet into the back of her knees, causing her to buckle forward and land with two painful thuds. James, however, pushed Diana further down and slammed her body onto the ground, trapping her arm against her back with a foot and didn't mean to wake you up, cat, and gripping onto Diana's large wings with both hands. I gasped. He wasn't going to rip them off of her, right? With a concentration glare on the don't get in my way, cat. Thank you. With a concentrated glare on the back of Diana's head, his fist tightened around Diana's feathery wings and suddenly sent a wave of golden flames through them. The fire stopped at Diana's back, only consuming the wings in a gold-red flame. Oh god. Diana's scream echoed through the room, bouncing off of the floor and walls in a frenzy as she could do nothing but feel the flames engulf her wings. The feathers that painted over them began to burn and dissolve into ash, falling around her. Soon enough, the pain became unbearable enough to force Diana to make her wings vanish back into her skin, where two large burn marks signed themselves.
I'm sorry.
Hang on a second. There we go. Not giving Diana a single ounce of mercy, James dug his foot beneath her body and flipped her over, causing her back to arch in pain from the impact of her burns on the marble. Smoke snaked out from her back as she gasped loudly. As Diana opened her mouth and let out her breath, James quickly grasped onto her neck, squeezing it tightly and causing the succubus beneath him to choke. James! Neither demon would hear me as Diana grabbed onto James's wrist and began to claw at him, desperate to make him let go of her. Her eyes began to flicker from gold to their original clear white and gold colors as Diana could do nothing but spasm from the lack of air. Oh boy. I needed to stop him before he killed her. The angel wasn't worth her death. I rushed forward and grabbed into James's arms, making him look up at me as I knelt down beside him. James, stop it! You'll kill Diana! James stared at me, taking in what I had said with the same surprised look before looking down at the succubus beneath him and glaring hard. Was he going to kill her anyway?
Come out and fight me.
Oh boy. With a burst of energy surging through James's hand, Diana arched back, a spray of frothy saliva and blood erupting from her mouth towards the far wall. James's grip had loosened around her neck, but Diana's body continued to spasm from James's attack. Diana's eyes rolled onto the back of her head, finally faded from the gold to white, as she gasped for air and her body relaxed at last. As Diana's body finally went limp and settled onto the marble, a large white aura of smoke whisked out of her chest and shot itself at the throne. I can't pronounce that word, good lord. Settling on the steps and slowly growing taller in place. The white smoke finally formed into the air, into a familiar cloaked being who was arched forward with his veiny hands tensed out beside him. Something about the angel, however, seemed different than before, as if it had somehow gained energy from being within Diana.
You filthy cur! You continue to try and defy your destiny when it is useless!
Oh my god, I hate this guy. James stood and glared hard at the angel, forming his sword once again, and his hand and pointing it towards his new opponent. His body began to glow, and the room began to brighten at his golden aura.
I have no such destiny to remain in this world. My life is bound to the one I love, not to an empty chair gained through blood.
You will have no choice in the matter!
Oh. Oh my god, I hate you! Like two bullets, James and the angel rushed at each other and collided with James's sword against the angel's bare hands. I expected James's blades to tear through the angel's flesh, but the steel pressed against the angel's hand like it was grazing stone. The angel's grip to James's blade and slowly began to crush it beneath his hands, causing the magic surrounding it to falter and fade. James and I stared wide-eyed as the angel was able to rip the bone. The bone? Wow, I can't read. Rip the broken piece of the sword off and toss it to the side like it was plastic. Determined still, James shot his energy through his sword and reformed the blade, going once again for another attack, only to be blocked by the angel's forearms. Upon impact, the steel of the blade shattered like glass, falling to the ground.
I am no mere servant of heaven, demon. I am the keeper of destiny, the scribe of fates. You cannot defeat me no matter what spells you conjure.
Oh, fuck you. Upon the final words, the angel pressed his hands forward and slammed them against James's chest, forcing him to fly back and slam into the far wall. James! I instantly began to rush towards him, but found myself being lifted off the ground. Oh my god, you freaking kidding me? By the back of my neck and pulled away from James towards the angel. Ugh!
No!
Are you kidding me? I grabbed at the back of my neck, feeling the angel's hand grip it tightly and keep my body afloat. Somehow his hands felt indeed like stone and concrete, grazing against my skin, ruffling, almost tearing at the flesh as I struggled. Let me go!
I should have forced you to choose from the beginning, demon. This human will not see reason to let you go, but I know that you will see reason in the offer I will graciously give you now.
Oh my god! The angel held my body out, dangling me into the air like a doll as I flailed and clawed at the angel's arms. My nails mercilessly scratched against his stone skin as I felt my energy slowly deplete even further than it was in my spirit.
Accept your fate, demon.
No!
And I will bring her back to the human world unharmed. Refuse, and I will release her to the gates of hell for the devil spawn to ravish.
What the fudge, dude? As he spoke of James's potential refusal, A large wave of heat burst out beneath my feet, causing me to look down and scream at the sight on the ground. Beneath my body was a large open circle and with red flames flaring out of it. Between the flames, I could barely make out the sights of hundreds of hands reaching up to try and stretch themselves through the hole above them and towards me. No! Each hand, burned in red, sent waves of remembrance down my body as an image of Malik's appeared in my head. Ah! My fear only spurred me to flail harder in the hold I was in, uncaring of the friction his hand was causing my skin. I could feel blood gather and drip. Really, Cat? Okay, Cat, you're in my way. Ah, you're in my way, Cat. I couldn't read. Flesh tearing open from my attempts. James stared up at me, quaking from the fear of the situation. We were far away from him, where he couldn't reach me. Even if he sprinted as I dropped, I was left into James's decision. James, don't! Hair in my mouth. Ew. However, something in James's eyes changed. A dark gold painted over his eyes and his body began to float in the air. Oh my god, dude, I'm getting chills.
Let her go!
As you wish!
Are you fucking kidding me? A gas managed to rush into my body as the angel's hand on my neck vanished without a trace. My body began to fall into the open pit below me. A wave of intense heat reaming my legs before I felt a strong pair of arms wrap around me and pull me forward. What the fudge? What? I looked up to see James gripping me tightly, flying back away from the angel with me encased in his tight hold. As we reached the doorway of the main hall, James landed and set me down, keeping his intense glare on the angel by the throne. As the angel made their way towards us, I could feel the air become colder with each step he took.
You cannot smite me, demon. It is useless to try.
Oh my
If
god,
I cannot
fuck you.
kill you, then I will send you to a place you can never escape from.
On James's word, a large set of purple ethereal tendrils snaked around the angel's hands and neck, tugging him back roughly. James and I looked back to see Diana rising from her unconscious state and glaring daggers into the back of the angel's cloak, as her hand connected her to the tendrils around her target. It was mildly frightening to see her eyes completely coated in gold, just like James's eyes as she snarled at her now captured victim.
How dare you defile me!
Thank you, Diana, I love you! James, in retaliation, formed a large wall between himself and the angel, pushing him back in time with Diana's tendril pulls. Each time the angel dispelled one of the tendrils on his body, James pushed forward and Diana formed another tendril in its place. It became a team effort, forcing the angel back to balance his feet over the edge of the hell pit he opened. However, despite each rough tug and push James and Diana gave him, the angel continued to balance himself. With a burst of white light, the angel completely dissolved the tendrils and magic wall, jutting upwards and floating high in the air, tense and growling. The two demons, however, wouldn't let him hang around for long. I can't pronounce that word. For the life of me, I can't pronounce that word. James and Diana pounced off of the ground and flew into the air at the angel. Diana on her summoned but damaged wings, and James with his new powers. Diana summoned her saber, and James formed his sword, clashing them against the angel's body. The blades didn't break, but simply pounded against the cloak that the angel wore as if they were hitting armor. The angel became frazzled and he began to defend himself against the two opponents, each not giving him an ounce of mercy in their attacks. It was almost dizzying to see Diana and James fly around their target, taking shots at him at ridiculous speed. Each hit resulted with a loud clank of steel against stone that bounced around the room in an endless but random cycle. Watching Diana and James encircle the angel with attacks was like watching gold and purple fireworks going off against the moon. Suddenly, Diana's saber was launched out of her hands, causing Diana to float back a bit in shock while James attacked the angel head on. Diana! As the angel knocked back James's attack, Diana swooped up behind the angel and entangled her arms around his and locked her legs around his cloak while pressing herself between his wings.
What?
Max! At her cry, purple and black lightning began to spatter and shake around the angel as Diana freezing them in the air, but electric words for the life of me. I can't pronounce that word. Both.
James! No!
Go, Diana! The Incubus didn't falter as he gathered energy into his blade, making it gleam an almost ethereal and godlike glow.
No! It's over!
Yeah, it's over, you. Oh, God. I hate that angel. God. With a large shout, James shot himself forward and impaled his sword into the angel's body, successfully ramming through his body and skewering both the angel and Diana. Oh God. Golden purple lightning wrapping around the angel, both from Diana's spell and James's blade, causing the wings on his back to burn away into the bones, then to ash. The angel's hand slowly began to darken to an ashy black color from the electrocution. That's how you say it, for the life of me. James ripped his blade out from his two victims as Diana finally pushed herself away from the angel, leaving him to float in the air for a moment, frozen from the pain. As the angel began to fall, he let out a deathly scream before falling into the hell pit below. Goodbye, asshole. The angel's body vanished into the hell pit before a large burst of reddish orange flame burst from its opening. The chaotic screams of devils erupted from the pit as the flames began to die out and vanish. Soon enough, the pit slowly closed itself, having been fed a proper body to seal it away. Yay! I collapsed onto my knees, feeling the drain of the entire situation hit me like a, whatever you pronounce that word, wave. It was over. It was over at last, but for how long? This entire situation became a chaotic mess. James forced the angel of fate into a pit of hell. Did this mean that James was free? What about the angel? Too many questions rang in my head, but stopped as James landed beside me and knelt down, lifting my chin, making me look at him. He looked worn out, panting for air from the experience, but still had a kind smile. It was so satisfying feeling James with me. I had barely noticed the black scar on his chest vanish from his skin. I became lost in his eyes in relief. Thank goodness.
It's over now.
Yay. I could only nod, feeling the slow growth of elation trickle into my chest as I looked up at James. He was alive. We were still together and the angel was gone. If it wasn't over, I was sure that other angels would have come at us. Fair. That's fair. I wrapped my arms around James, relieved that everything was over and we were at peace at last. Diana, however, let out a pained gasp from where she had fallen, gripping the open wound on her stomach and panting. James and I looked over in surprise as Diana began coughing out blood and calling out, "Diana!
Settle!"
On her command, a burst of white light emerged in front of her body before revealing her half-angel guard, looking around him at the new surroundings and locking his sights down at his fallen mistress.
Isaiah!
Oh, Diana. Quickly, Seto dropped to his knees and placed his hands over her wound while he wrapped an arm around her shoulder and back. Diana winced and continued to pant for air, gritting her teeth.
What happened? Who did?
Shut up and heal me.
Seto nodded in quick obedience before muttering to himself and closing his eyes. With white energy flowed through his hands into Diana's wound. To my astonishment, the wound slowly began to close and zip together like it was never there. As Diana let out a sigh, she closed her eyes and relaxed into Seto's arms, laying her head against his upper arm. Seto let out a breath of relief as well, moving his hand beneath Diana's knees and lifting her up bridal style. Aww. James and I stood as soon as Seto did, facing him as he turned to us and glared hard at James. I gripped onto James's hand, stepping forward to be between the boys. Seto began to walk towards us.
What happened?
We fought an angel. It has been properly disposed of.
Yeah. The air in the room once again chilled as Seto kept his stare on my husband. A faint white glow surrounding his body. It faded, however, at his mistress's voice.
Seto.
Seto looked down to see Diana looking up at him and bringing a hand up to his cheek. The tension in his eyes faded at the sight and feel of her actions, making me release the fearful breath I was holding. Aww. Without another word, without another word against my incubus, Seto turned and walked around me and James. As he reached the door, however, he turned his head towards us.
It would seem that your destiny has been broken. Well done.
Thanks, Seto.
How do you know this?
Long story. Complicated. Seto didn't speak again before leaving us alone. James and I watched him leave before relaxing into each other's arms with me, laying my head on James's shoulder. I could only remember Seto's words as he vanished into the dark of the castle hall. If Seto was right, then James had enough power to break his stone destiny, and him sending the angel back packing only confirmed it. Thank God. It's over.
Yes, it is.
Whew. James and I held each other tightly, taking in the situation. The war was over. The angel hunt for James was apparently over. We were safe now, and we could go home. All we can do now was let out a sigh and cherish the silence that followed. We would go home soon. Yay! It was over. The war was finally over. As the smoke cleared, we were victorious. The soldiers left standing were the ones to cheer in victory. The sky became littered with the howls and cries of the joyful and happy. I can't pronounce that word. Of the demon lord had ended. But what now? Home was now possible. We could go back to the human world, and we could live our lives as we wanted. It was something I desperately wanted, and yet my body was not ready to make the journey just yet. We had to celebrate the success of the war after all. As the full moon rose over Lilith's castle towards the dawn, the entirety of the demon world celebrated with endless drinks and food, laughter and dancing. It was so unreal, but the courtyard that I could see was filled with smiles and happy faces. We had stayed for one more night, traveling back to Lilith's castle to rest and return home as healthy as we could be. After all, we had just gone through a war. One more night in the demon world wasn't going to hurt us. While the majority of the rebellion danced in the courtyard, I remained with the Incubi and the rebel leaders who were all in the royal hall having their own celebration. Drinks were shared and battle stories were exchanged, making some laugh and others roll their eyes. I found myself intrigued at the stories Sergeant told about the front line. Hi, Diana. As I looked at Diana, however, she simply kept quiet with a small smile on her face. She looked at the Incubi and the rebel leaders in silence before walking away from the little party we had. After she knew I was staring at her, Diana looked over at me and slightly gestured with her hand to follow her. I followed, curious as to where she was going. I made sure to remain as quiet as I separated from the rest of the group and followed her out of the room into the hall. The entire journey, Diana didn't speak a word. Even Seto didn't follow her, most likely being told that she wanted to speak to me alone. Diana led me through the castle up a couple sets of stairs into what looked to be a royal bedroom with a balcony. Was this a guest room? It was untouched and I could smell the very faint scent of dust. Why did she bring me here? Diana stepped into the room using her magic to ignite the blah words I can't. Hold on. And air out the room by opening the balcony window. Before I could ask, however, Diana finally spoke up.
I have to thank you, dear.
For what?
For aiding us in this war. We've been fighting the Demon Lord for so long. We thought the war would never end. As terrible as the circumstance was, if you hadn't been summoned here, we probably would have still been fighting now.
Fair. Yeah. Diana walked to the balcony and leaned against the railing, staring into the dark night sky. The light from the room illuminated her form as she gazed at the stars. Despite the situation around us, the air seemed calm with the faint echo of the celebrations whispering through the night. I walked over and stood beside her, leaning against the balcony, and looked at Diana as she smiled and let out a chuckle.
To be very honest, I didn't expect to ever see you again.
Aww.
After I took your energy that night, I vowed to never deal with humans again. No clairvoyance could have told me about you coming into play in this war.
Okay, I've never heard that word before. Clairvoyance, I never heard that before. I wasn't exactly counting on coming here. It was good to see you again, though. Diana stared wide-eyed at me. I can't read. A small form of a blush on her cheeks. What? It was true. Yeah. Diana, you're so adorable. I was able to see another side of her. Hi. Hi, sausage. Where are you going? Okay. One that wasn't cruel or ruthless towards me. I guessed it was the real her, and I was happy to find out that she wasn't a terrible person after all. When you were in the human world, I never imagined you to be a nice person. You did everything you could to mess with me and try to get coerce the boys to return. Since I came, I know who you really are. You have a good heart, Diane, and I'm glad to know that now. I am glad. Diana stared for a while before smiling softly, her eyes slightly glossing over in a sense of appreciation. Oh, my God, I love you, Diana. She almost looked like a little girl for half a second, her face so full of innocence. Oh.
And you do as well, my friend.
Oh, I love you, Diana. Diana turned her body to me and held her hand out towards me. I smiled back and took her hand, gently shaking it before pulling her to me, surprising her. I wanted to hug her, so I did. I wrapped my arms around her body and felt her very slowly relax into my embrace. With a small breath and what I assumed to be a purr, Diana wrapped her arms around me and hugged me back. Never would I have imagined embracing Diana and seeing her not as an enemy, but as a friend. It was mind-boggling, but I was glad to know the real Diana now. Especially since I got to know her in her route. I love that we got to know her a little bit more. She has a good heart and I love her so much. Diana and I pulled away from each other and smiled before she stepped back to her original spot.
Oh, I had almost forgotten.
What's up? I tilted my head at her. What was she talking about? Diana lifted one of her hands towards the sky and waved her hand through the air, making a soft purple mist glow around her fingers. Within seconds, the mist morphed and formed itself into a lavender-covered lily. Aww. Resting peacefully between Diana's fingers, she brought it down and presented it to me with a kind gaze. Oh my God,
my dear.
Aw, I can't read. Okay, a gift? I slowly took a flower out of Diana's hands and inspected it visually. It was light, but I could feel a soft glow of magic emanating from the stem and petals. The bloom reminded me of a human world lily, but something about it seemed otherworldly.
A flower known only to demons of Lilith. We call it the flower of Lilith, because these flowers were said to have been created when Lilith first appeared in the Abyssal Plains.
Aww. I stared at Diana, not understanding why she was giving me such a gift. She chuckled at my confusion and leaned against the railing, continuing her explanation.
It is also a flower we succubi use when we marry.
Oh, interesting. Use? What do you mean? Diana chuckled again before she gently took the flower from my hands and tucked it behind my ear. As it settled against my ear, I felt mist circle my head and formed into a flower crown of lavender lilies. The way Diana looked at me made me feel like I was in my bridal wear already.
A human you may be, but Lilith would have been proud to see you marrying one of her own. These flowers represent her blessing, and may only crown the worthy.
Aww. I felt a blush run across my cheeks. This was a blessing. I slowly reached up and ran my fingers along the flower crown and adorning my head, feeling the soft petals against my fingertips. They were almost pulsing with energy. I felt both flattered and honored that a simple flower felt that I was worthy enough to crown my head. Diana let out a sigh and looked back to the sky, making me do the same. One would have expected the sky to be full of smoke or smell of a war's aftermath, but the sky was clear and fresh air drifted through my nose as I inhaled. It was indeed another world, and tonight was my last night in it.
I guess this will be my last night, won't it?
What? I turned my head to Diana in confusion. She didn't look to me and continued to smile at the sky. What was she talking about? In Diana's hand formed a small goblet containing a dark liquid I assumed to be wine. She placed the goblet towards me on the balcony without looking and waited. She avoided looking towards me as she waited for something to happen. What was she? Then I felt a small weight in my pocket and memories flooded to the back of my mind. I stared at Diana in shock when I realized what she was doing. She knew, and she was willing to take it. I stared at the goblet, now measuring the worth of this action. The vial in my pocket could be so many things: a sleeping draught, poison, acid. Diana, however, seemed to be accepting of whatever it was. I became suddenly conflicted. Did I want to do this to her? Oh, son of a beeswax. I remembered the promise I had made, but I couldn't go through with it. Diana was my friend now, and she had done so much for me in this world. She didn't deserve whatever the vial had in store for her. I took the goblet and cleared my throat, finally getting Diana to turn her head and look at me. It can't be your last night. You must have a world to rule. One drink isn't going to kill you. I feel like I'm going to regret this. I feel like I'm going to regret this decision. Diana stared at me, a look of pure confusion on her face. Before she looked to the goblet in my hand, seeing it remain pure, I smiled as she watched me lift the goblet to my lips and drink from it. In instinct, Diana reached for me in a panic, but I stepped away from her, holding the goblet away. Hey, you gave it to me!
But it...
Diana! I stared plainly at the succubus, reaching my free hand in my pocket and revealing the still corked vial. I held it out to her as she gently took it, staring at it before looking back at me. You deserve to rule this world. Anyone who says otherwise is an idiot. Diana's eyes began to water as her face became red and her lips began to tremble. Did she really expect me to use the vial? Oh. Hello. Hey, kitty. Come here. No? You just want to stand there? Okay. Come here. Where are you going? My cat came in. You just want to stay there? Okay. She held the vial tightly and covered her eyes, most likely not wanting me to see her cry. I felt incredibly sorry for her, seeing her weep silently. She was a target and she expected her death to come around because of her standing as queen of the rebellion. What will Diana do when she officially takes the crown of the entire demon world? I waited as Diana rubbed her eyes and cleared her throat. Now, finished with her personal breakdown, she looked to me and smiled just slightly.
Well, I guess one drink won't hurt me, huh?
Come here. Come on. Come here. Come here, baby. Here, let me move that for you. My cat came in, see? Where are you going? You're not getting in on my lap. And now you're in my way. Lay down. Come on, lay down. Lay down, baby, so I can see and read this. Sorry. There we go. What, you want my chair? Oh. You are such a weird cat. She twisted her free hand through the air and formed a second goblet filled with the same liquid that was in my cup and raised it towards me. I smiled and clicked my goblet against hers. Hi.
Thank you, my dear.
Okay. I knew you were gonna do that. Knew you were gonna do that, cat. To the new queen of the Abyssal Plains, long may she rise. I can't pronounce that word. We simultaneously sipped our drinks and let the words ring between us. It was a worthy toast, and Diana deserved it. She would be the new queen of the demon world.
Well, you did it! Congratulations! You've made it to the end of your story. I have to say, I am very surprised at how it turned out.
Oh, yeah?
Nevertheless, I'm glad things worked out in the end, whether it was for the better or otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did James defeat his father, the dreaded demon lord, but both of you took out a band of angels! Seriously! That's wild!
That is wild.
But I guess it was for the best, or else they would have kept trying to hunt you down and make
Right.
James the king of the demon world. Angels. So persistent.
Right?
Anyways, you've been through a lot, so why don't we skip to... Huh? You want to know what happened after the war?
Right. I want to know what happened after.
I mean, I guess I could tell you.
Whoever voices Kay, I love you.
After the war was finished, the entire rebellion celebrated. Word spread far and wide about the rebellion's success, and soon every kingdom in the Abyssal Plains had become united with the new authority. You would think demons would be more hostile towards each other, being demons and all, but the threat of the Demon Lord was what brought the entire world together.
Right?
The entire world united under one banner, the Lilith Crest. Diana became the sovereign of the entire plane, accepted and loved by practically everyone because of her devotion to the world and her bravery in the war. Sero, as devoted as ever, remained by her side as her loyal bodyguard. Yep. Diana became one of the most beloved rulers in all of Demon World history. Her natural heart of gold led her to lead the world to a prosperous future, one filled with peace and happiness.
Cool.
However, she had a long list of words to say against the rebel leaders. You did give her the vial of poison, after all. While Diana had a heart of gold, she wasn't at all forgiving of what they had attempted to do to her through you. She made them choose between death or banishment from the Central Council. Faye, Sergeant, and Rabbit chose banishment. Shadow chose death.
Oh! Shadow chose death. Huh. Why am I surprised about that?
And I believe that is everything that happened after... Well, except for your story, anyway. James and you returned home and prepared once again for your marriage. Everything was taken care of before he found you, so no one knew the wiser. Huh? How do I know? Well, I have my ways. Maybe you should check it out.
The wedding was perfect, the reception even more so. Everything that happened to me before the wedding was completely washed away by the nerves that rushed through me and the joy I felt when I finally said I do. As the wedding bells chimed, then the cheers rang through the air as James and I finally kissed. I could almost see my future laid out before me, and it was gorgeous. I could go on and on about the wedding and the honeymoon, but honestly, after the war, I was more concerned of living my life afterwards. Our lives escalated to new heights after we officially became husband and wife. James helped the Anderson Toys Company skyrocket through the business world, now an official Anderson. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Like how? How do you pronounce that word? I stood beside him, aiding him in every way possible. As for me, I began to go through my own success in life, dedicating myself to becoming exactly what I wanted to be. After all, my husband was a CEO. Nothing was barred from me. If I put the same amount of work in as I did in the demon world, then I was going to be okay. However, there was never a day that went by that I didn't think about what was happening in the Abyssal Plains. It was a heavy chapter of my life, one that tested the love between me and James. The memory of the angels that chased after us would always run shivers down my spine, reminding me that at any moment an angel could lash out at us once more. Still, I was confident that we would get through it and stay together no matter what came our way. Demon, devil, or angel, it didn't matter to us. We were unstoppable together. The faint memory of my own power slightly tingled through me every time I grew confident, eagerly reminding me that I had the strength of my own. I would never let anyone come between me and James ever again. The slow settling of it all rumbled in my mind as I laid in bed, holding James close to me. I was so happy to see him every morning, even more so now to occasionally glimpse glimpse, blah, blah. His wedding ring resting on his ring finger. Another option for a thumbnail to put on YouTube. I couldn't help myself from brushing my fingers over his gorgeous black locks, staring at his closed eyes. How did I ever deserve you? It seemed so unreal holding him close to me. How lucky was I to have a man who not only was strong but also intelligent and charming, all in one package. The demon part of him almost became an extra dab of cream on the top. Whenever I looked at him, my heart would overflow in joy. This was indeed true love, and I was the luckiest person in the universe. I softly leaned in and kissed his forehead, needing to show my love even as he slept. He protected me with his arms around me, and I would show him my gratitude for as long as we were together. My kiss, however, slowly made James begin to stir in my arms. I gasped a bit before giggling, seeing his eyes slowly flutter open. The sight of his tired, whiskey-colored eyes made my heart do giddy flips, knowing that they would always look at me out of love. Aww. Good morning.
Good morning.
James nuzzled into the pillow beneath his head, taking a moment to wake up at last before smiling up at me. I smiled back, sliding my body closer to James and nuzzling his chest. How'd you sleep?
I slept well, but waking up to your smile is so much better.
My heart. A red blush rushed across my face before I buried my face in James's shoulder, making him laugh and hug me against his chest. The constant hum that rumbled in his chest made me smile despite the embarrassment on my cheeks. I'd be embarrassed too, to be honest. Cute. Oh, so adorable. I was going to experience this every morning, waking up in his arms and feeling complete within him. James gently kissed over my head before squeezing around my waist, making me look up at him and become lost in his loving eyes.
What about you?
I let a cheesy grin paint across my face before pecking his chin with my lips lightly, making him stare wide-eyed at me in surprised amusement. Sleep was good, but I'd rather be awake with you. James chuckled and kissed my forehead, hugging me tightly onto him.
Well then, what shall we do today?
Don't you have work? James shook his head and caressed my cheek lovingly. I unconsciously nuzzled into his palm, loving the warmth radiating from it as I stared at James patiently listening. I'm guessing he has a day off.
I managed to grab a couple days off.
I was right. How many days?
How does a whole week sound?
Aw, James. I grinned and squeezed him tightly in a hug of my own, making him laugh a bit and kissed my nose sweetly. You're all mine for a week.
For a whole week. Though I'm all yours regardless of that.
Oh, James, you're so adorable. To hear him claim that made my heart skip a beat. No one else to lay claim to him but me, and I was thrilled at that. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat as he cradled my head to him and rested his cheek against my hair.
So, any ideas? We could go into Chicago and watch a couple of shows, or we could even fly out somewhere if you want.
That actually does sound fun. I would love to do that. We can do anything.
Anything you want.
Aw. I thought for a moment, trying to decide what to do. There were so many things available to us, but as I felt myself melt into James's embrace, I closed my eyes and rubbed my head against his chest. How about we lay here for a bit and then decide later? With a nod and a laugh, James gave me a loving squeeze and shifted to make himself comfy, allowing me to use his chest as my pillow. While the idea of adventure was enticing, does sound fun, we could save it for when we were ready to really get out of bed.
As my beautiful wife wishes.
Oh, I love you, James. James lifted my chin slightly and stared deep into my eyes with an adoring gaze and smile, making every part of me practically swoon at the sight.
I love you too. More than anyone in the world. I will always be here beside you every morning and every night for as long as we live.
My heart. Oh God, my heart. I believed every word. I let his words themselves into my heart, then I would remember them forever. As James finally kissed me, locking his lips with mine, he sealed his words. His destiny was to be with me, and I would be with him. No angel could ever change that. No demon could break that. And that was my perfect happily ever after. My destiny is with you. Aww. Now since we have finished James's route, I'm going to end the stream here. Let's see who is live at the same time as me, so I can see who I can raid. Raid. You want to say bye on my stream? Come here. Come here. Alright, say bye. Bye. Alright. Had to make my cat say bye. And I don't know where the hell he went. Behind my chair. He's obsessed with being behind my chair. I don't know why. Oy vey, sausage. Why are you obsessed with being behind my chair? Alright, I'm going to end stream here, and I'm going to raid Felicia Day. She is playing something called Core Keeper, and I have no idea what that is. And I'm going to figure out whose route I'm going to be doing, either Eric or Matthew's route. I'm not 100%. So, hope you guys have enjoyed me playing this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!